All righty, it finally got to 9 o'clock, and good morning, everybody. This is the Swanee River Water Management District Governing Board meeting, a public hearing. It's available on YouTube link and open to the public. We'll go ahead and stand, please, for Pledge of Allegiance and our prayer.
Father God, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity to gather and to discuss the future of the natural resources you've so blessed us with here in North Florida. Father, I ask your blessing on staff and this board as we continue to do the work of protecting for the next generations these beautiful natural resources, Father. I thank you for the wisdom and integrity of these people that give so much of themselves. I'm going to ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. I think I neglected to also comment that it is July 9th, 2024. And if we could go ahead and have a roll call, Ms. Robin?
Chair Johns?
Here.
Mr. Keith?
Here.
Mr. Schwab?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Sessions?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Lloyd?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
14, Business and Community Services, tentative fiscal year 2024 to 2025 millage and budget.
All righty. Thank you, ma'am. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Okay, we will open up at this time the meeting for public comment. And the first card I have here is Mr. Frank Davis. Good morning.
Morning. It's good to be here this morning. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit here. I'm the mayor of Live Oak, and I wanted to come and to thank you all for your assistance and help in acquiring the DEP funding for the sewer to septic to sewer project that that's taking place in the city of Live Oak. Without you guys, I don't know where we would be with that project. Probably wouldn't be where we are now, getting ready to look for the contractor. I understand that we have the planning that's complete, so everything is in place. However, as you probably know, and I am here a little early because the agenda item is 25, but I've got a few other stops to make, and they were gracious enough to allow me to come and share a little bit before the item came up. But again, I'm here to thank you for your help. I know that we've gotten a little extra funding on this project, not just a little extra. I think we nearly doubled it. Again, that was your help in getting that, and we're still a little bit short, but the agenda item number 25, as you know, will be coming up, and you'll discuss the cost sharing assistance. I'm here again to thank you for considering that, and hopefully we can get some of those septic tanks offline and get it on the sewer. That'll help all of not just the city, but the quality of our water in our county, and we thank you. I probably can't answer any questions if you had any, but I'd be glad to. I would like to say that I have to go way back with the Swanee River Water Management District back in the early 80s when I was a county coordinator and Jerry Scarborough was the clerk of court. We had a lot of activity along the river, making sure that we protected the quality of water there, and so I appreciate the good work that you're doing out here.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you being a good partner and
Thank
helping.
you again. Thank you for being the partners in this project. And as I said, I understand the planning is completed on this project. We're just waiting to do the procurement, get the contractor. I don't know how long the project would take, but once we get started, I'm sure it'll be pretty quick.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming
Thank you
today.
for allowing me to come. Share this
Absolutely.
before Item 25 gives me a little time to do some other things.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
All righty. Let's see. The next card is Jeff Hill.
Good morning, board members. I am Jeffrey Hill. I live in Columbia County, Florida. Although this board resolved 10 years ago to pay me for irrigation pipe belonging to me that was run over by staff vehicles, I have not been paid. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak during public comment? All right, there being none, we'll close public comment and we'll move on to our consent agenda. Anybody have any questions on the consent agenda, or do you have a motion?
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All righty, let's see here. Make sure I don't miss one. All right, we will move on to then our hydrologic conditions report. Good morning.
Madam Chair, members of the board. I'd like to present the hydrologic conditions report for June 2024. My thanks this month goes out to Katie McBride. She was out servicing some of the equipment out at Gilchrist Blue Springs just a couple weeks ago, and she sent me over this beautiful picture. Thought it was a nice way to take a look at some stuff that wasn't flooding this month, which is very good. But I think it's a great way to start our hydro report for June 2024. My thanks goes out to Katie for allowing me to use this photo. All right, rainfall for June 2024, we had a district-wide average of 3.1 inches. That represents 55% less than that long-term average of 6.8 inches. Now, I do want to mention at the end of May, we had a 7.7-inch surplus. This month, we have a deficit of 1.4 inches. I'll go into that in a subsequent slide, but I did want to mention that real quick. Looking at the map here, that 3 to 4 inch range does encompass the district-wide average for the month. We see a lot more of that kind of in the southern part of the district versus up in the northern part. Up in the northern part of the district, we're seeing anywhere from 2 to 3 inches or less than 2 inches in that dark blue and light blue colors respectively. As we start to move farther south, we see some higher amounts of rainfall, some 4 to 5 inches in orange, 5 to 6 inches in red, and more than 6 inches in that pink color. We saw quite a few areas of that, Taylor County, Dixie County, right along the river in Dixie County, Levy County, up into Alachua, Bradford, Union, and then this big area from Hamilton stretching down through Live Oak and Suwannee County. Those all were more than 6 inches of rainfall for the month. All right, so this is actually the figure 1 from the report. I wanted to show this to kind of see what we were looking like for the past 13 months. June 2023, we had over 12 inches. I think it was around 12.1 inches of rainfall. And then as we kind of ventured on down in the months, we saw some months where we had less than average amounts, July, August, September, moving over into February, and of course, June of this year. We did have some months where we had way more than average, 12.1 inches in June, and then we also had, I believe it was just over 8 inches in December. And some of the other times we had right at or just above average, October, November, January, and then we go from March, April, May. Those were the months where it rained a whole bunch, and then we got some flooding this past spring. But what I wanted to show here is when I came to the board last month, we had in this square here for the past 12 months for ending May, we had a total of 62.4 inches of rainfall. Subtracting that from the 54.7 inches that we have for our long-term average, that's 7.7 inches of surplus. As we move forward and move that window forward, we only get 53.3 inches. Compare that with a 54.7, that gives us a deficit of 1.38. Couple reasons why. Number one is we moved over, we don't include this June 2023 in that calculation anymore. So we lost that 12.1 inches roughly. And we only replaced that with the 3.1 inches that we got this June. So that kind of gives you an idea of we went from a nice surplus to a little bit of a deficit. This is a departure from normal precipitation. This is actually from National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Regional Climate Center. I wanted to point out that in our district, we are mostly seeing deficits at this point. Some lower deficits anywhere from 0, which is kind of breaking even, to 2 inches in that yellow, to 2 to 4 inches of deficit in the lighter orange. The darker orange is 4 to 6 inches of deficit. That's mainly up in the center part of our district, stretching from Dixie County up through Hamilton, even into South Georgia. We did have one little area, it's probably gonna be a little tough to see, but right here, it was on the border of Suwannee, Columbia, and into Hamilton counties where we saw 6 to 8 inches of deficit in just that one little spot. So we could definitely use a little bit more rain as far as this is concerned. Stream flow conditions for June 2024, as I mentioned previously, those 3 months where we were above average for the March, April, May, had some flooding issues, and that kind of carried over into June, which you can kind of see here. We see a lot of gauges starting the month in that high, the greater than 90th percentile, or even that dark blue, that above normal, which is 75th to 90th percentile. But a lot of those gauges within the month fell into the normal range, which is the 25th to 75th percentile. Pretty much all through the district, we're seeing them end in the normal range, which is good. Steinhatchee, however, began the month in the above normal, but did fall into that below normal, that 10th to 25th percentile. And Fort White began the month in the normal, but ended in the below normal as far as flows are concerned. Very similar story up in South Georgia, Alapaha, and with Withlacoochee at Quitman. Both began in the high, and then they've fallen in the below normal categories. Ocklawackee, Thomasville, and Little River kind of following some of our pattern as well, beginning in the above normal at the first of the month, and then ending in the normal, the 25th to 75th at the end of the month. This is the upper Florida and aquifer levels. This was the end of May. I brought this last month, but I did want to show this again to compare with this month. What we were seeing was large area of above 90th percentile, and then we had 75th to 90th kind of stretching all the way over to the eastern part of our district, and that's in that lighter blue color. We did see some higher levels down in Gilchrist County, to even down stretching across the river, around the river rather, through Dixie and Levy County as well. Most of the district south of that was in the normal range, which is that very light blue color. And we did have a couple of wells in Levy County that were showing 10th to 25th percentile. As we fast forward this month, keep in mind we didn't quite meet our average for rainfall. So we're seeing some areas contracting up north. So we're seeing a lot less of that above 90th percentile. Now it's kind of just over in Jefferson County, coming down through Madison County into Suwannee County. I think there's a well in Lafayette that was showing that as well. And even the 75th and 90th percentiles have shrunk. Most of this eastern part of our district's now seeing normal ranges at 25th to 75th percentile. We do see an expansion of that 10th to 25th percentile in orange. We're seeing some of those in Levy, some of those wells in Levy County, Dixie County, a well in Gilchrist, and a couple of those in Jefferson in that 10th to 25th percentile. We do have 3 wells, one in Levy, one in Dixie, it's kind of hard to see, one there, and then one in Lafayette that were all below the 10th percentile. Given that not a lot of rainfall occurred in the past few months down in this area, that would make sense. We would see some lower percentiles for our wells in that area. So we could definitely use some more rain down there for sure. This is U.S. Drought Monitor. This was released actually the July 3rd, but it's dated for the 4th. What we were seeing, or what we're seeing currently, is in our western part of our district, we're seeing the yellow, which is the D0, which is abnormally dry. But for the most part, all of the other counties in our district are seeing moderate drought at this point. Until we start to get some more widespread storms, or we get something, a little bit more rainmakers, we're probably going to stay in at least moderate drought for another week, I would say. I did want to mention, this is the Climate Prediction Center's El Nino Southern Oscillation Probabilities. I've mentioned in the past couple of board meetings that we're going to be traveling or actually going into the El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions. Well, that did happen. It happened in June, probably midway in June. And you can kind of see that here with the greater than 95% chance from May, June, and July, that block there. So we are currently in those neutral conditions. But if we start to go forward in time, we start seeing some higher percentiles of La Nina coming into our climate. We're seeing from July, August, September, 65% chance. And then the highest percent chance is over November, December, January. It's just about 85% chance. So it looks like we're going to have a La Nina coming in as a climate pattern, and then pretty much stick with us until after the new year, January, February, March, still upwards of 70+% chance of happening there. So, and I do want to mention also the La Nina is a little bit drier, and on average, those conditions are drier and a little bit warmer in our area. So that's what we can kind of expect. They can differ somewhat, but typically that's the pattern that we see with La Nina in our area. With that said, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's seasonal outlook for July through September is still showing above normal rainfall probabilities. I think this probably has something to do with hurricane season, the potential for some Gulf stuff coming up over us, dropping quite a bit of rainfall. But their models are seeing above normal rainfall probability for the next 3 months. And above normal temperature probabilities as well. Pretty much the entire United States is going to see above normal temperatures, except for over in the West Coast where they've got equal chances. All right, I wanted to give a little bit of an Atlantic hurricane season update. Over on your top left is the Colorado State University. They monthly now, they're going to start releasing their predictions, kind of their updated predictions. They released their last one on June 11th. I think the new one comes out today. But they're still pretty much the same. 23 named storms they're predicting, 11 hurricanes, and then 5 major hurricanes. Looking down below, these are, I believe, 21 names that we have for the Atlantic tropical cyclones. Alberto has formed and dissipated. Beryl has formed and dissipated, and so has Chris. So we've already gotten 3. Up next would be Debbie, Ernesto, Francine, and Gordon, and that would finish out that first row there. I did want to mention with Beryl, Beryl did make landfall actually twice. It made landfall in the Yucatan as I believe it was category 3 or 4. I know it did hit 4 while it was out in the Caribbean, which was the earliest major hurricane we have on record. Typically, we don't see major hurricanes until August, September timeframe. But it did degrade just a little bit until it got just offshore and it became a category 1 before it hit around the Galveston, Texas area. As far as this map goes, this was, of course, from yesterday, but I looked this morning. We don't really have anything else right now that they're looking at, so fingers crossed we have at least a quiet 7 days that we can look forward to. All right, June 2024 summary. As I mentioned, we had a rainfall amount of 3.1 inches, about 55% lower than that long-term average of 6.8 inches. We had a 12-month district-wide deficit at the end of June of 1.4 inches, whereas we had a surplus of 7.7 inches at the end of May. District-wide upper Florida and aquifer levels did fall from the 77th percentile to the 59th, which is still good. We're still within that normal range. But we did have a median level decrease across our monitored wells of about 1.6 feet. El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions, as I mentioned, currently present, and we do have a 65% chance of La Nina development from July to September, and our highest percent chance from November to January at 85%. District counties are, according to the drought monitor, are either in abnormally dry, kind of over in the west, or moderate drought categories. Most of our district counties are in the moderate drought category currently. And finally, 3 named Atlantic storms so far. We had Alberto, Beryl, and Chris, Beryl being the first major hurricane of the season as it hit a category 4 when it was in the Southern Caribbean. Madam Chair, I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Any questions this morning? Yes, sir.
Just quickly, we're talking about obviously a great possibility of La Nina throughout the summer. But then we're also, which is normally a drier state in our time, but then they're predicting above average rainfall. How does that play together?
Madam Chair, I can guess at that really. What I would say, it was probably their models are seeing the fact that we're going to have an above normal hurricane season. Being in Florida, let's go back. Being in Florida, of course, we're prone to all kinds of landfall from hurricanes. So I think what their models are seeing is with that highly active season, we have the potential for tropical storms, tropical depressions, or even hurricanes themselves to come and kind of sit over the state of Florida. That's my guess. I would have to say that's probably what their models are seeing.
So without the hurricanes, it'd be dry and
Yes, Madam
hot.
Chair, we would definitely be dry. We'd probably see more of what we're seeing now. We'd see quite a bit of the 5 o'clock rains and things like that, because if it gets so hot, our atmosphere gets very unstable, and one spot you can get 3 inches of rain, another spot nothing. So it's one of those things that we have to deal with in Florida.
Any other questions? All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Hugh, you are up.
Well, good morning, Board, and it's my pleasure to stand before you this morning to let you know about some recognition that the district received. I know this board is very well aware of the staff effort and the board's effort involved with our FEMA risk mapping, particularly in the Santa Fe Basin area, and wanted to let you know that Leroy traveled and accepted an award on behalf of the district as recognition for the outreach effort associated with that process. And it's still ongoing, as you very well know. The 2024 Outreach Award was given to the district from the Association of State Floodplain Managers. And so for that effort, I've got a little bit of narrative here I'd like to read about the effort that was put in. We are considered a cooperating technical partner, or CTP, with FEMA, and we reviewed FEMA requires a review of the proposed maps prior to them becoming a preliminary status of those. And that effort is designed to allow the local citizens to give input with that and on those maps and what changes. So with that, this board, this district values citizen input and engaging with the citizens from an educational aspect, and listening to their concerns and issues with that. So in addition to 2 additional meetings with the local government within the 7 counties in the Santa Fe Basin, we also held 3 scheduled meetings with the citizens as well for there. And to ensure the most accurate flood maps possible with the local governments and citizens, that effort was conducted, and I know Troy and our communications group was very instrumental, as well as our other staff members outside of Leroy and Mary with that. Without that effort, the citizens would not have had a chance to comment on those changes to the flood risk maps. And so it was very critical that they be able to see what changes would occur with their property. And I know several of you were engaged with that effort and received calls from concerned citizens associated with that. The district received 1,242 online comments related to those changes, and it prompted us to extend the comment period with that. Staff spoke with FEMA about that. FEMA approved doing that, and so during that time frame, there was an additional half dozen press releases that went out, letting people know that extension had been put into place, 20 stories on the radio and television, and interviews. Troy did a great job on those interviews, as well as Leroy, the man who can part water. And social media was also a big driver with that. Staff, as you well know, staff does engage with social media, and it's very effective in conducting outreach effort. We made 15 social media posts associated with receiving the comments, and it had over 13,000 views on there. And the changes have been implemented in there. The maps are being revised and have been revised. It's anticipated that some of those maps will be available next year for folks to review. And there have been substantial changes in those maps themselves, the configurations of those maps. So with that, I would like to commend especially Leroy and Mary. I know they were very instrumental in the effort that went forward, as well as some of our other staff in engaging and being at those public meetings to receive comments from the public. So I attended some of them myself, and I know the chair was at one that was held over in Alachua there, and we had several staff members there, one-on-one engagement with the public during that time. So with that, I would like to congratulate them and our staff and the district as a whole, and you as a board for supporting that effort. So thank you very much.
We thank you.
And Leroy had some pictures presented. This was him accepting the award out in Salt Lake City with that. And that's what, 2 weeks ago, Leroy?
I believe so.
Sometime about that time frame. So thank you. Roy, did you want any pictures, or are you good?
Yeah, pictures I'm married to.
Okay. Sure. That's up to the board.
I think so. I tell you what, I was at some of the meetings, and it was a monster effort that I saw our staff go through. And I think our public realized how much work that staff and the district went through to give them the opportunity that otherwise most of the time they would have not known about. So I'm very proud of the district for engaging in the way that you did on this. And I think Leroy even got FEMA to use some newer information on the maps that it really changed things. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Front, are we going now?
Oh, that's good.
Been there, done that.
Go right by here and be very keen.
Let's contrast.
All right. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. You're good.
Thank you.
I took it out yesterday once we were real. The grandson likes it. Thank you, people.
All right, Hugh, is that it for public comment? Okay, that's. All right, so we will go right on to Tom Reeves. Have you got something for us today?
Just one thing, I wanted to discuss a minute, the document that Mr. Hill had handed out, I think a meeting or 2 meetings ago. As you'll recall, he had filed an action in U.S. District Court in Jacksonville, civil rights action dealing with various things. That had been ruled against him by the U.S. District Judge in Jacksonville. That had been appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the federal court of appeals that handles appeals from the state of Florida. The federal court of appeals had dismissed the appeal because Mr. Hill had failed to file a notice of interested parties, which is a technical requirement that you're required to do with appeals. They later decided to withdraw that. They did not give the reasons why they did that. I assume it was because he was pro se, but I don't know that. That's a guess. But at any rate, they had withdrawn that, and so now it's going to be decided on the merits. And so that's what that piece of paper was. It was their decision to withdraw the dismissal based upon the technical violation and decided on the merits. We've, our attorneys, the board is being represented by the attorneys appointed by the insurance company. They have since filed their brief, and so we're proceeding to have that decided on its merits. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions of me.
All right, thank you. Any questions, to Tom on that regard? Okay, is there a time frame for that whole process?
There are certainly time limits for when briefs have to be filed. Ours was filed, and now Mr. Hill has to respond if he wishes. Otherwise, it goes on to the court. Once it's fully briefed and goes to the court, there are goals that they try to meet, but no, there's no set amount of time with appeals, especially. Because the idea is that everyone's had their day in court at the trial level, so the appeal, they can kind of take whatever time they want to make sure it's done properly. So if I had to guess, I would think within the next 6 to 12 months, you're probably going to get an opinion out of them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, Tim, good morning.
Madam Chair, members of the governing board, those in attendance, good morning. For business and community services, you'll find items number 10 through 25 on this morning's agenda. Several of these items were just approved by way of the consent agenda, so we want you to know we greatly appreciate that. We'll start this morning with item number 10. This will be a facilities update given by our Office of Administration Chief, Mr. Ben Glass. Then we'll have Ms. Pam Shaw and Kristen Thompson present items number 14 and 15 for your consideration and approval. And then we'll ask our even more famous Division Director of Resource Management and Environmental Projects, Mr. Leroy Marshall, to come and speak to items number 19 and 20. And we'll end with item number 25. This will be presented by Mary Diaz, and that item can be found on BCS page 35. Ian?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good
Just a
morning.
quick update for you on where we're at with our lab renovation project and some other facility issues. So for the lab, we've got the building totally wrapped. They're starting to put down the tar paper, getting ready to put on the roof. Expect the siding to go up any day. Once they have that good and dried in, they'll begin on the interior, which we've already completed the demolition in there, so they just want to have to help us put it back together. So it's on schedule and proceeding as planned. We also expect quotes back this week on some of our other needs in the main facility here. These are going to be rough numbers that we're going to use for planning purposes to proceed with how to bid that project out, how to scope it, to get the best bang for the district's dollar. Of course, all those decisions will come back to you all. And as far as other facilities, I'm happy to report, Mr. Keith, we have a fully functioning facility in the lobby for you today. And Mr. Schwab, Robin even has you some
I'm telling you,
decorations.
the word searches were very, very entertaining. The only problem is it was a little distracting. You know, sometimes the main thing needs to be the main thing, but you know, it's okay. We're good though. Robin did a good job. I appreciate that. I did find a few words while I was tending to business this morning.
Oh, dear.
That's all I have, unless y'all have any questions.
Any questions for Ben? All right,
What's the estimated completion of the facility?
So we're hoping August 1st. I think August 1st is a little ambitious. Probably going to look more like September. But that's what we're shooting for right now.
all right. Well, once you get the lab done, we all want a tour.
Yes, ma'am. We'll
All
make
right.
that happen.
Sounds good.
Madam Chair, one other question. The $2.5 million that we got from the governor for facilities, this project was already funded previous to that, and then the $2.5 million is for everything else.
Madam Chair. Yes, sir. That's correct. $2.5 million is going to help us renovate the exterior of our main facilities here. That's what those quotes that we're getting in, hopefully by the end of this week, are going to help us see what we can get done with that $2.5 million and how to best use it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have for you item number 14, BCS page number 11, the tentative fiscal year 2024 to 2025 millage and budget. Per section 373.536 Florida statute, the district is required to submit for consideration by the governing board a tentative budget covering its proposed operations and requirements for the ensuing fiscal year on or before July 15th. As you may recall, we conducted a tentative budget workshop in May, and there have been no change in the expenditure authority since the workshop. Fiscal year 2024 to 2025 tentative budget depicts an annual budget of $79,967,278. Further requirements of fund allocations and areas of emphasis within the budget may be changed between now and September 10th as deemed appropriate by the governing board, executive office of the governor, and/or Florida legislature. Do want to cover section 200.065 Florida statute provides that each taxing authority advise each county property appraiser in its jurisdiction its tentative millage rates for publication in the truth and millage notices. The tentative millage rollback rate is 0.2936 mils. The final rate will be based on collective certifications by each county within the district, certified to the Department of Revenue. And should any revisions or corrections be received prior to August 1st, the rollback rate and corresponding ad valorem revenue will be adjusted accordingly. However, any adjustments to the tentative millage will not exceed the fiscal year 2023-2024 millage rate of 0.3113. The final adopted millage rate that the governing board adopts in September cannot exceed the proposed millage rate that we certified to the property appraisers without a second mailed notice to the property owners. The district will hold one public hearing on September 10th, 2024 at 5:05 p.m. to establish the millage rate and tentatively adopt the fiscal year 2025 budget. We will also hold a second public hearing on September 23rd, 2024 at 5:05 p.m. to adopt the millage rate and adopt the fiscal year 25 budget. As such, we do recommend the governing board authorize the executive director to set the tentative millage at the rollback rate of 0.2936. Grant staff authority to adjust the rollback rate if data should change. Approve the tentative fiscal year 2024-2025 budget of $79,967,278. Authorize staff to make adjustments and corrections to the budget. Authorize staff to submit the standard format tentative budget pursuant to section 373.536 Florida statutes. And finally, authorize staff to notify the property appraisers of the district's 15 counties that the district proposes to levy the millage rollback rate.
That's a lot. Oh, dear.
Madam Chair.
Uh-huh.
What is, can you explain to me the difference between what's on here on BCS 11, which is the tentative millage at rollback rate of 0.3113, and you keep referring to 0.2936?
Yes, sir. This memo was an update. The 0.3113 is actually the current year's rate, which we had as a placeholder in the memo until we received the final property value certifications from the property appraisers on July 3rd.
Understood.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Just,
Uh-huh.
yeah, well, I got one other question, and I think I know the answer. So the the budgetary amount that we are actually collecting via ad valorem taxes is the same number, roughly the same number?
That is the placeholder that we had in place with the updated values that we received from the property appraiser's office. We are actually anticipating to budget for $7,094,781 in ad valorem revenue, which is actually a $204,000 increase over the current year's budget of just over 6.8 million.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Good, okay.
Madam Chair, I make the motion that we approve it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank Kristen for her hard work of jumping into the budget, and she's doing a really great job. So, anyway. I do have one item for you. It's item 15, BCS page 13. It's for the resolution number 2024-04 to release the fiscal year 2024-25 state appropriations. As you know, the Florida legislature has actually included $9,005,119 for the Swanee River Water Management District in the General Appropriations Act, Chapter 2024-04. It includes our operational money, our environmental resource permitting money, our payment in lieu of taxes, land management, minimum flows and minimum levels, and the facilities refurbishment of the $2.5 million that we just discussed. We have to get the approval from you in a resolution to be able to accept these funds. We also want to thank the governor, the legislature, and DEP for their continued support. So our recommendation is that you approve Resolution 2024-04, requesting the release of the $9,005,119 in legislative appropriations from the Secretary of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Here to give you an update on items 19 through 25. 19 and 20 are for informational purposes. Do want to congratulate the permitting staff for they are completing our metrics reports, and they met all of the they met their metrics goals for review times for permits, both WUP and ERP. I want to remind you that they missed a week for HECRAS training, and they were still able to meet the review goals for last quarter. So I do want to let you know that the staff is doing their job and also was able to make that training. Wanted to also let the board know that we brought the 47 consultants before you a couple of months ago. As of now, we have 15 contracts signed, and we have about a dozen more that are working through the process. Once all those contracts get signed, then we will start bringing the TWAs for those contracts for all the projects that we have. Those are the two the updates for the permitting and projects. As we stated, 21 through 24 were approved on consent. Thank you. All of those are FEMA contracts for our consultants so that they can continue to do their work for the FY23 year. And then now I'll turn it over to Mary for item number 25.
Thank you, Lord.
One little quick question for Leroy.
Yes, sir.
Leroy, I noticed there was a big uptick in the environmental resource permitting exception category. Is that unusual? Is there some development activity that's just a lot of it came in the hopper at one time, or?
Madam Chair. We go through waves
Yeah.
with permitting. Definitely, there's times where you get more. Sometimes right at the summer. The exemptions are usually your smaller type projects, and you have waves.
Okay.
I have a question for Leroy too. How are you doing on staffing? Are you fully staffed in that department now?
We are, Madam Chair, we have one that we have a opening right now for one. It's an environmental scientist. We actually are in the middle of interviews right now for that environmental scientist position, and then after that, we will be fully staffed.
Leroy, I have to say that even though you're down one staff member, that's a heck of a feat to be up to date at doing what you need to do. Thank you very much. Because believe me, when you guys aren't doing some reason, for whatever reason it is, it might not be your fault, it might be, but we hear it. We hear it, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
That's the staff.
Yes, sir. I'm not just telling you, thank you for the staff. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Thank you, Leroy.
Mayor?
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good morning.
Here to present agenda item number 25 on BCS page 35 regarding the Live Oak Reuse Project. In January 2022, the governing board approved the district's receipt of $3.24 million from the Florida DEP for the Live Oak Septic to Sewer and Reuse Project. The district entered into contract with DEP in July of 2022 and into contract with the City of Live Oak in September of 2022 to provide cost share assistance for the Live Oak Septic to Sewer and Reuse Project with funds from the DEP. The project has experienced additional expenses due to the rising costs of construction, and the district and the City of Live Oak submitted applications to DEP for additional funding to cover the shortfall. The DEP has awarded the project $2.65 million in state water quality funds and an additional $300,000 in federal wastewater grant funds. The total amount of funding for the project will now be $6.19 million. So the recommendation is to authorize the executive director to amend contract 2122-180 with the Florida DEP to receive an additional $2.95 million and extend the end date, and to amend contract 2122-199 with the City of Live Oak to include the amended amount and extend the time frame. With that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
I have a question and a concern, really, that we're, 2 years into this project and it's nearly doubled. And the construction hasn't even started yet. Is there going to be, is it going to double again, or are we got some firm numbers now that are somewhat reliable?
Madam Chair? So they went out to bid, the City of Live Oak went out to bid, and they've got their contract now with their cost estimates, and it's a firm bid, and so shouldn't expect to change, but.
Right. So the previous when it was the first award was given and was approved, that was just based on an estimate that engineers had come up with.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, it was based on our cost estimate, and that cost estimate was done pre-COVID.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it's a great project. I think
yeah.
the district, should support these kind of projects, trying to get people off of the septic systems. It never ceases to amaze me how much money it costs to get some of this stuff done.
My question probably relates to his, but this came up January of 22, 2.5 years into this. We're just now getting estimates.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
A little history on the project. The The cost estimate was done in January 2019, pre-COVID, and that initial scope and funding was done to DEP back at the end of 2020. And in that process, DEP changed funding sources, and it took a whole year to then finally get into contract. And so the project has been in design phase, and they just went and got their bids in February of this year. And so that explains that time frame difference. So we secured the funding back in around 2020, but because the DEP changed funding sources, it took a year to finally get into contract with DEP. And then we went into contract with Live Oak, and they were in a design phase, and they finished design and went out to bid earlier this year. And the bid came back very, very high.
Well, my concern, and it's not just this project, but we see projects, Columbia County on their wastewater facility. How much time goes by before it initiates? Only common sense that construction cost is going to go up in that time. Now, we did hit a period that was extremely high, but even in normal times, it's going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there always this much delay in getting a project started? I understand there's red tape, but you're talking a couple of years, that's a lot of time involved. I mean, is there a way that we can speed up the process when we get these grants going instead of taking all the time we need and then come back and get more money to cover the cost of the delay? Just curious about that. Are we being wise in how we monitor this proceeding?
Madam Chair, I think in this case, it's such an extreme case because that initial cost estimate was pre-COVID, and there's that double difference in that price, and it's such a big, in a normal process where you would have started design and maybe take a year to do the design, there shouldn't be this exorbitant difference that is highlighted today, just because, again, those cost estimates were pre-COVID, and so it looks very big. It looks like 2 years cost of this double the amount of the project to go up and double in price, but it's not really what happened in this case.
Well, I can understand the COVID period, but we're talking January of 22. People were back to work in January of 22. And this was when we requested the funding from DEP. So from that period, we're just now getting quotes. That's the 2-year gap I'm concerned with.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify, we didn't get the funding from DEP back. Well, so we went into contract with DEP in 2022, but we had secured that funding years prior. It just took that long to get a contract written with DEP. That the cost estimate is done and the funding was secured prior to COVID. It just took us that long to get into contract. And now because the whole COVID happened, those cost estimates were not realistic anymore.
They didn't actually secure the funding in 22?
Yes. Sorry, what did I say? Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. So the initial conversations with DEP started back in 2017. And then in 2019, they went and got a cost estimate, and they secured the funding with DEP. But because they changed funding sources to federal money, it took a year to get into contract with DEP because of that change. So we didn't get into contract with them until 2022. But the available funding was already procured prior to COVID. And so what made it so different is the conversation started pre-COVID, and then COVID happened, and then the prices.
I can understand the amount change. But when we did secure funding, obviously there was plenty there to get bids on, if not design. Just that 2-year period is what I'm questioning.
Madam Chair, the 2-year design period, I guess, is what you're getting at. Why didn't they do some?
So from 22, they've been in design. They got the design, and then they sent the design out for bid.
Yes, sir.
That took 2.5 years. Okay. It just, and I don't do construction, maybe somebody in construction that have more input than I would, but as a layman, I just, a long time.
Go ahead. Yeah, I have comments too. Go ahead. I'm in construction and I understand.
Charles, you make a valid point, and that is one of the concerns that we have had. I think that there are a number of factors that affect this, part of depending upon who is doing, which community is doing the project, their staffing capability. I don't necessarily think that's the case in this example, but that we have incurred that staff changes that occur on the local level sometimes play into that. And then the factor of them having staff that can determine the bid process and go through that, as well as getting the contract executed with us, and us with DEP and receivers. Unfortunately, it does move at a snail's pace sometimes. And it seems like the entire time the clock is ticking on the dollar sign. Unfortunately, kind of where we're at. Under the chair, not talking about that.
Sounds frustrating for the people involved.
Yes, it is. Yeah, anything that deals with grants or trying to establish, especially a project like this one, it takes forever. And then sometimes it takes a long time for the process to end up making payments to the contractor. And it, with their 90 days to get it's just red tape. I mean, it's not any one thing you can point at. It's just slow. I do have one question. Do you know off the top of your head, and I don't know whether you looked at the design, how many septic tanks are we then going to take out of process and put them on the sewer system?
Yes, Madam Chair, 60 residential and 3 businesses. 3 commercial existing septics. Yeah. They're off Duval Street and 105th, 30 homes and 3 businesses, and then on Northwest 2nd and 11th Avenue, 30 homes.
And the fluids will be going to their existing
Sewer
sources?
treatment plant, yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
that's mind-boggling to me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I was hoping it'd be more.
But I was hoping for many more too. And I don't want to belabor this issue more than we already have, really. But what's involved here? Is it just running it? Is there not a sewer line out on the street for these people to hook to, and that we're having to put in a new main line and all that sort of thing?
Yes, sir.
So there could potentially be others hooked to it. Would that be a fair assumption? At least it's extending it to an area where maybe it could be hooked to again, or?
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair, I'm not going to be voting on this for sure, but it will extend the sewer lines to points where it can be hooked to and service more of Live Oak. This has been a red tape nightmare, going back to DEP, back and forth, design changes, things like that. It does seem like an awful lot of money for 60 units, but it has the ability for expansion is the biggest part of this, because there's no sewer in that part of town. And that's all I'm going to say, since I'm not going to vote on this.
Madam Chair.
What is Live Oak's capacity at this point? I mean, we're going to add this into their existing sewer system. Our capacity is 40%. And it's even taking this into calculation. Yeah. We're less than 40 right now. Outstanding.
That's good.
I have a question. Speaking of red tape and how long it's been taking, if we get a contract and we get everything together, how long is the project supposed to take?
So this is going to extend the project with Live Oak to June 30, 2026. And from July 31st to 2025 to June 30, 2026. And with DEP, we extended the maximum we could, which is September 2027.
So roughly a year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so, question is within that 12-month period of time or so, versus, maybe 14, whatever, the contractor's confident that they can get the work done for $6.1 million, 6.2?
That's what we got from them. Yes.
That's what we got from them. Okay, excellent, because we don't need to
Come back.
because at 60 units here, let's see, not to be a Debbie Downer here, that's $103,000 per unit. That's very expensive.
That's a lot of septic tanks, guys.
But,
There's
we
also
understand.
been a
There
change
were
in,
two businesses.
There's two businesses, that's right.
there's also been a change in people pushing the project in the last little while. That wants to get things done quicker than kicking the can down the road. I'll just leave it at that.
Well,
Patient person in this room.
the other thing that we have to consider, though, honestly, is as much as we work and operate in systems that have red tape in them for our construction partners, for our community, for water quality and everything else, I think we as a whole group, whether we're staff or we're board members, need to be pushing and encouraging and seeking change to the red tape process, because obviously through all the red tape, and DEP's a good example of this, that 12 months cost millions of dollars. We have to make a change. I mean, the reason why inflation rates are the way they are and other things is because there's being too much money spent on projects like this right here. In our opinion, Mr. Larry K., very little bang for our buck. Is that right? But we're having to get used to that. And the unfortunate thing that I'm learning about the inflation process is these projects aren't going to get any cheaper. Even if we get the inflation rate back down to 2% where it needs to be, the prices that are set today are not going to come down. It's still going to cost us $20 to go to Chick-fil-A. Okay? So this it's still probably going to cost us $106,000 per hookup for what we need to do, but we need to be able to, time is money, and obviously the time that we took to do this project cost us a lot of money. So I would make the recommendation that we approve it, and let's get on with it.
I have one question to Mr. Schwab primarily. If it's $50,000 a household, are you still not just as, that's a lot of money. How are we gaining that much? If you're your business, are you spending that much for this? You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's still, I get the construction. I started projects in 2019 and 20, and you can't even buy the materials for the same price as the budgetary quotes. Ran into this many times. It's very frustrating. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
So you're doubling the cost is I've seen it triple. That's not a deal. But the question is at $100,000 a household. 103. Well, you left off the two businesses. And I certainly want to. This isn't just Live Oak. This is every single city in in our district. Are we going to spend $100,000 a residence for everybody in our district? That's not where my tax dollars need to be going.
Madam Chair.
There's a reality to this, folks.
Right.
We sit here and make decisions because it's the money. We don't get the money. Somebody else is going to spend it. I get that. But good God, $100,000 to get us off septic. What is our environmental gain here?
Good question.
Well, again, Madam Chair,
Yes. Mhm.
the question I asked, and Larry gave us an explanation for it. The fact that it's for future expansion and future development. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be in favor of it. But I think that because it is carrying it to an area of Live Oak that doesn't have sewer now, that is either A, growing, or has the ability to hook up future expansion or future lines to it, which reduces that number from $103,000 a pop, maybe down to,
80,000.
well, I mean, I'm hoping it's a lot lower than that. And I don't know how much Larry can, because he's involved with the city, how much he can actually answer here.
Unfortunately, it has to be done.
Let
right? We
council
agree with
answer
that?
for me,
Yes.
please.
But I mean, coming to us and, I obviously I have a problem spending this kind of money, with it. I'm not gonna, it's just, because it's not here. We gotta do it in Lake City. I mean, we've gotta do it everywhere. You know, it's just, there seems to be, the cities themselves, the counties themselves have, fallen behind on what they need to be doing, and it's coming to us. And it's just I guess it's a very tough pill to swallow. That didn't mean to be such a Debbie Downer on the
No,
project.
you are absolutely,
Nobody has really truly explained to me the environmental gain.
Madam Chair, I can,
hold on, Mary, hold on just a second, Tom.
I just wanted to comment on the conflict issue. When Mr. Sessions has been appointed city manager, we talked about this. In my opinion, that's not a conflict because you're talking about two public entities and you're talking about tax dollars. And so the tax dollars going between two public entities doesn't present the same conflict as it would if it was a private entity. Now, Mr. Sessions, I think in an abundance of caution has decided not to vote on the issue, which certainly he is free to make that decision, but I don't think it's a conflict. So I don't think he's prohibited from talking on the issue in front of the board. So that's been my advice.
Then I've got a question then.
Yes.
Larry, I mean, this project, and I'm not familiar with Live Oak as good as I should be, and I know you are. So we extend this, we spend the $6 million or $6.2 million and extend it to the 30 residences and the businesses. Don't forget the businesses. But the point of it is it like the area of Live Oak that's being newly developed where we got more subdivisions coming in? Because we got people coming in here like left and right, and we want them to spend the money to get hooked up to the sewer.
There's a portion in 105th Street is where what we call the cut through road from 90 all the way to Lowe's.
Okay, yeah.
There is going to be somewhere around 500 single family units and 15 commercial businesses right on that road. And 105th butts up to that road, just stops right there. So if we provide the sewer and the water to that point, then we can hook up all that new business. It's already been accessed or annexed by the city. They've already done it. So when you drive down that road, if you'll notice on the right-hand side of the cut-through road, there's a 300-foot setback right there. That's all gonna all be commercial. And then on the Lowe's side of the road is all gonna be residential. And we get to the corner up there where those apartments are, there's gonna be multifamily up there also. So it will essentially help us loop right back into where those apartments are and take everything in between on 105th all the way through. But the initial thing was to get septic out of yards, which is also is destroying the septic tanks also in this cost. So when I showed up, this was happening. Things don't happen fast enough for me in government.
One quick question for you.
And so
Does the city of Live Oak, does the sewage treatment facility, can it handle the additional 500?
oh yeah, no,
And many more?
and many more.
Okay.
We're below 40% capacity. We always have, even after a huge rain, we're still below 40%, when it comes in anyway. So we're in great shape for that. We have plans for another plant north of the interstate eventually, but we're in great shape capacity wise.
I'm sorry, Are we having some contribution from these new businesses and these new apartments and homes to?
Everybody that hooks up has to pay tap and impact fees, which, and then you're bringing revenue to the city where maybe they can quit asking for grants. That's where I'm trying to get. The city has only grown by 200 people since 1960. The county has grown by 31,000. So the city has been asking the same people for 60 years to pay all their bills, and the prices for services and everything keeps going up. So the only way to improve what's going on in the city is to get more customers. More people that hook up, they pay tap and impact, and then they're also a customer. So when they're not only water and sewer customers, they're gas customers too, like these businesses that cook a lot of things. So we're pushing that, we're out actively selling gas, our gas versus the tanks that you see around, because we can do it cheaper. So with the team that I have together now, we're a little bit more assertive than they have been in the past. I'll leave it at that. And so when I showed up, a lot of these projects were stale, just sitting there. And it wasn't anything that y'all did wrong. It's just the fact that there was nobody really pushing anything. I'm a pusher. And we're actually turning dirt right now on getting some stuff underground taken care of and streets paved. But that hasn't been happening. And I told them when I came to work, if I get stuff done, I might stay. If I don't, I won't be there long because I'm used to getting things done. So this is an exorbitant amount, but the future and expansion will lessen the price as it moves on, because then the people have to pay the hookup and the impact fees to hook into the system down the line. It's just, we had to get it started somewhere. And I don't know who started the project years ago, who even asked for it. But I mean, I think it's a needed thing, and it will help what I call loop the system. But I'm not going to vote. Y'all do what you need to do, but that's my explanation.
I got a question. In part of the cost, did we have to buy, did the city have to buy right of way or easements? Is it going down the middle of paved roads?
It's going down roads that is, as you know well, driving in Live Oak, you see every road we have that's got a hole dug in it and patched over. We're going to eventually redo all the sewer and water in the city because of 100-year-old pipes. And then once we pave it, we won't have to cut it up in 2 weeks, because that's what's happening now. That's why I refuse to pave anything until we fix what's underneath the road.
I was just curious if this was fixing asphalt, if you have to dig through it for this, like down the middle of the road.
We're going, a lot of this is down the middle, but we try to do the side of the road possible, but still it's going to affect the road work, and it's going to be paving too.
Where will you get your funding for paving?
We're going to have to go out for bid for all that. We're going to have to do all that, but the DEP, I don't know if the DEP came to us and water management to start with or not. I don't know who initiated all this. I got a feeling DEP came to Live Oak, but with a possible for the grant, but this is way before my time. I'm just trying to get things done and move forward in Live Oak.
Didn't you make a motion?
I did, sir.
All right, second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Mary.
Mary, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Tim. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. The Division of Outreach and Operations has 7 items for your consideration this morning. Items number 26, 27, 28, and 32 are for informational purposes. Items number 29 and 30 you approved on recommended consent. Thank you very much for doing so. And item number 31 will be presented by our Land Management Chief, Lorna Radcliffe. I'd also like to note the display that our communications chief, Troy Roberts, put up this morning, along with some help from staff. Troy had worked with Ben Glass's team, the Ag Cost Share team, to develop these materials that we will take to different expos and seminars. given the board's support of agricultural cost share programs and education and outreach. So this is part of our ongoing efforts. And with that, we'll welcome Lorna.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members.
Good morning.
The district entered into contract last year with Sunshine Outdoor Services for road and hydrologic facility maintenance. The fiscal year 24-25 task work assignment under this contract will include 145 miles of road maintenance district-wide. Routine road maintenance consists of grading and lime rock patching. Additionally, this TWA includes 22 miles of intensive road maintenance and repair. There's 9 locations within the Steenhatchee Springs tract and Mallory Swamp tract that will be addressed with heavier application of lime rock, roadbed bolstering, ditch pulling, and hydrologic repair or maintenance. This TWA also includes additional maintenance cycles for 2 of the access roads leading to featured recreation sites, which are Goose Pasture and Steenhatchee Falls. The district lands are vulnerable to adverse weather conditions, so this plan is subject to change. The use of lime rock and hard rock are required and will be purchased with separate purchase orders not associated with this TWA. Funding for this TWA is included in the fiscal year 24-25 tentative budget and is contingent upon approval of the 24-25 final budget. The recommendation is to approve a task work assignment with Sunshine Outdoor Services for road and hydrologic facility maintenance for an amount not to exceed $310,000 for fiscal year 24-25.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
I would assume that since consent agenda, then this one will also remove the not to exceed contract and be rate based.
So Madam Chair, the consent agenda was for the main contract. The TWAs will be brought to you each time they're issued. So for consent,
Okay.
for approval.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
You got a question? Okay.
Ms. Lorna, if you don't mind, maybe next month or so, or maybe just email it to me. I'd just like to see a map. I'm a visual guy. I'd like to see the areas that you want to work on.
Sure.
And I'm not saying no or yes. I think that, it's money well spent, but I just like to see what areas we're working on and what we're doing.
Absolutely. You have that mapped out.
Thank you.
Deal. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that was quick. Good morning, Dr. Brown.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we also just have a few items for you today. I'll give you a brief update, and that is that we've got some TWAs that we're bringing for our routine updates. Thank you for approving item number 35 by way of the consent agenda. We're trying to get ready for next fiscal year. The other 2 items that we have for you today are item 34 and 36. Those will both be presented by Ms. Susie Hetrick from our Water Resources Office.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Susie, before you get started, does anybody need a break? Or y'all want to power through? Okay, we're going to power through. Come on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chair, members of the board, today I have for you agenda items 34 and 36. Thank you for the consent of agenda item 35. For item 34, I'll be reporting on our 2023 water quality monitoring and data collection efforts. I'll start with a brief overview of our monitoring network and then present some of the data we collected in 2023. As the board is aware, the district's work involves 4 core focus areas: water supply, water quality, natural systems, and flood protection. And it's in support of our water quality focus area that the Office of Water Resources manages
a water quality monitoring network to help us identify current water quality status and long-term trends within the district. The district has a long history of water quality data collection beginning in the 1970s. This graph shows you the number of yearly sample events in green and, excuse me, the number of monitoring stations each year in yellow. Peaks in the sampling and station numbers typically are associated with the passage of laws or executive orders. Currently, we are collecting water quality samples from over 200 stations within our network and more than 800 sampling events per year. Okay, this is our first map. So this map is it shows you the location of our 2023 water quality monitoring stations, including groundwater and surface water. I will point out a couple of features on this map that you'll see on the next few maps in this presentation. And as we add features, I'll try to remember to point those out to you. So first, on this map and other maps, you'll see that our rivers are shown in the bright blue color, and our Floridan aquifer confinement status is shown in the gray colors. And for portions of the district where the upper Floridan is confined, that's shown in dark gray. Stipple gray shows the areas where the UFA is semi-confined, and then the light gray areas are where the Floridan is unconfined within the district. So again, this map shows you our, I think it's 229 water quality monitoring stations for 2023. That's both groundwater and surface water. This map shows the location of the stations broken down by station type. So in 2023, we sampled 86 groundwater monitoring stations. Those are shown by the blue triangles on the map. We sampled 72 monitoring stations on streams or lakes indicated by the brown squares. And then we sampled 71 spring stations shown on the map as the light blue bullseyes. So those stations are representative of ones that we call discrete sample or grab sample stations. I wanted to show on this map also that within our 71 spring stations, 11 of those are also where we have continuous monitoring. So the large-scale continuous monitoring equipment that's very expensive to both buy and maintain are at 11 of our priority focus area springs. Those are shown with the pink circles on the map. So what do we monitor within the district? At each monitoring station, we measure physical conditions, including water temperature, depth or level of the water, and water clarity. And then at the non-continuous stations, we collect discrete samples, what I mentioned earlier, called grab samples. And these are analyzed for several chemical components, including nutrients, such as nitrate, metals, alkalinity. It's important to note here what we don't monitor typically at our water quality stations. The district does not typically monitor bacteria, pesticides or herbicides, pharmaceuticals, petroleum products, or industrial byproducts. Those types of chemical components are monitored by other agencies in the state. So today I have highlighted nutrients on this list because that's what we will be taking a look at with our data from 2023. We will specifically focus on nitrates as we typically do. Before we get into those, I want to remind folks that there are specific water quality standards that we typically compare our nitrate data to. And in some cases, the standards serve as our targets for improvement. The first one that I like to point out is the National Drinking Water Standard for nitrate. It's 10 milligrams per liter. That's a threshold. Drinking water should not exceed 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate concentration in order to protect public health. And then the other standards are established by DEP for specific stream reaches and springs within our district. So portions of the Santa Fe and Swanee rivers have a nitrate target of 0.35 milligrams per liter. The Wassissa River has a nitrate target of 0.2 milligrams per liter. And then our springs, also within the Swanee and Santa Fe, have the 0.35 milligram per liter target, and the Wassissa Springs group has a 0.24 milligram per liter target. And again, those are target levels that are established by DEP. So without further ado, what I will do is I will present to you 6 different maps, 2 each for groundwater, surface water or streams and lakes and springs. And each of those maps, the first map will show status of our nitrate in those stations and then trends where we have enough data to show trends. I will point out on these maps, we have added the light green shaded areas here. Those are representative of the DEP's TMDL basins that are impaired for nutrients. So that's just to kind of give us some spatial perspective. So on this map, it shows our 2023 groundwater stations and their nitrate status at the end of 2023. All of the stations shown in green have nitrate levels below 0.35 milligrams per liter. Stations shown in yellow have a nitrate level between 0.35 milligrams per liter and 10 milligrams per liter. And stations shown in red exceed 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate at the end of 2023. Now, for those groundwater stations where we have enough long-term data to determine statistical trends, we show that we have 3 with a decreasing trend in nitrate concentration. We have 11 that are stable and 10 that show an increasing trend at the end of 2023. For our stream stations, similar, I did add one more element to this map. This will be the last element I've added. And these are the reaches of the rivers that are highlighted in bright blue. Those are reaches that have been identified. I mentioned them earlier in the standards slide. DEP has established numeric criteria for these reaches. So the Suwannee River below Ellaville, the Santa Fe River below the River Rise, and the Wassissa River. Those have been identified as by DEP to have that target criteria of 0.35 milligrams per liter. So it's important to see that spatially where our stations on these streams meet or don't meet that target. So for all of the stream stations that are shown as green, those are below 0.35 milligrams per liter of nitrate, and then the stream stations shown in yellow are above 0.35 milligrams per liter of nitrate. We do not have any stream stations that are above 10. And likewise, similar to our groundwater maps where we had enough enough data to establish statistical trends for some of our stream stations, these are the trends for those. And let's see. So we have one showing a decreasing trend, that's up at the mouth of the Steve. We have 18 which are currently stable at the end of 2023, and we have 6 that are showing an increasing trend in our stream stations. And finally, our springs. Again, we monitored 71 different springs in 2023, and this map shows the status of those spring stations. Same thing, 0.35 milligrams per liter or less than 0.35 milligrams per liter are shown in green. Between 0.35 and 10 are shown in yellow, and above 10 milligrams per liter are shown in red. And similarly, with the ones that we have enough long-term data for trends, these are the trends that we're showing. 3 are currently decreasing in trend, 14 are stable, and 20 are increasing. So our summary for our 2023 water quality monitoring and data collection is that we collected groundwater samples at 86 different stations. 2 of those stations exceed 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate at monitoring wells. We collected surface water samples at 72 stream or lake stations. 10 of the stream stations within the numeric nutrient criteria reaches of the rivers exceed 0.35 milligrams per liter target. And we collected water quality samples at 71 spring stations. 11 are below 0.35 milligrams per liter, and 3 are exceeding 10 milligrams per liter. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll take any questions.
I have a couple.
All right.
Susie, please tell me some of this money we just spent in library is going to help get those nitrate levels down.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I believe what I've heard when I listen to the projects that are presented is there is an analysis that shows how many pounds of nitrogen the project is predicted to remove from the system. I would hope also that they will help reduce the nitrate levels on some of our springs and streams. I will point out also that I think it's timely, if you all are not aware, that DEP is updating their B-maps for the Swanee and the Santa Fe and the Wassissa basins. And they started some public meetings earlier this year. And I think they're on track to update everything by a year from now, beginning of July of 2025. Their updates need to be in place. And what I want to point out there is in their process, they are pretty vigorously, I don't know, they're ambitiously identifying nitrogen sources in each of those basins. And it's interesting to see some of that information. And as well, they are developing methods, I guess, projects and allocations for those different nitrogen sources. So to answer your question, yes, some of the projects that we put in place do certainly reduce nitrogen loading to the basins. They have to. But relatively speaking, how much they reduce is another question.
Excellent answer.
It depends. Yes, sir.
Yes. You answered my first question. That was, are we doing anything to, or is there anything on the horizon to see some downward trend? My first question was, historically, are we seeing an increase in the nitrate levels over time? Or is it always kind of been this way? I mean, can you give me a feel for that?
Yes, I can, Madam Chair. What we know is, number one, the target levels, the very low target levels for nitrates at some of our springs, and certainly some of the rivers that are heavily influenced by the springs. Some of the basis of those target levels is because of background data of what was there before times, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the nitrate levels were very low. And so to answer your question, yes, we have been seeing a pretty steady increase in nitrate levels in most of our springs through time. I haven't looked at the data for all of our springs, but I'd stop short of saying in all of our springs, but certainly most of our springs, we've seen increase through time. Now, some of those, as you can see on this map, are stabilizing. They're not going up anymore. Some of them are actually coming down some. Whether or not that holds remains to be seen, and whether or not others stop being stable but start decreasing also remains to be seen. Every year, we add another year to the look back. These trends are not predictive. They can't tell us where it's going, but we can look back and we add another year of data to the look back and understand how things might be changing over time, how they certainly are leveling off in some streams or springs, and then how in a few they're actually showing to decrease.
Just one other question, Madam Chair. You mentioned that you tasked for a few things, nitrates being the primary one, the one that you're showing us the data on. And DEP tasked for all the other stuff. Does DEP share that information with the district as far as if they see a trend of high levels of, bacteria, petroleums or whatever in our water basin, in our basin, do we get notified of that?
Madam Chair? I do not directly get notified. We do attempt to maintain contact with folks at DEP and the other agencies to maintain lines of communication in both directions. Frankly, sometimes we see things in some of our data that we kind of go, hey, somebody else needs to take a look at this, Department of Health in some cases. And so I think in my short time here, the challenge has been finding a person to consistently maintain that communication with. But they communicate with us sometimes just by virtue of public meetings. We get the information that way. But when we're planning our water quality monitoring, each year where we spend money on contractors to monitor water quality, we reach out to DEP to kind of compare notes. Where are they collecting that we don't need to be collecting, and what information do they have on certain systems that we might be able to use? So I'd say there is communication. It's probably not the best it could be, but it seems to have improved since I've been here for sure.
So the like when the sewer plant goes crazy or they get flooded up in Valdosta, and we get those notifications about the levels of bacteria levels. Is that something that we're getting that data coming from somebody else?
Data, what the releases are?
What the bacteria levels are. You said it's less than or more than a certain amount, you know.
That monitoring, and Susie's been involved with that whenever those releases were more frequent. And she still stays involved with that. But that actually comes from on our state side, from the Department of Health. Generally, whenever and they're the ones that issue your boil water notices, bacteria conditions, unsafe conditions in the river, swimming, fishing. But that is coordinated through the Department of Environmental Protection and with us relative to the Valdosta issues. I think our staff has established a pretty good rapport with the city itself and the utilities group there, so that when they do have a spill and those notifications come out to us, and then we reach out to DEP and verify with the local Department of Health, make sure everybody is aware on the same page.
Okay. Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to, Susie, would you please go back a couple of slides to the ones where it looks like the Wakasasa, or not the Wakasasa, but the with Lakuchi, and what's the one to the west? Wasissa. There was a couple where they showed higher in nitrates coming down those two tributaries. Because if you look at everything coming out of Fargo, it's been filtered by the swamp and everything, but then when you get to the confluence of the Swanee and looks like with Lakuchi and the Wasissa there, you've got an uptick in, I believe that's the map that I was looking at earlier, where there's an uptick in nitrates. And of course, to me, it's farming, and it's also the city of Valdosta, is what I would think would be causing that right there, because the rest of the Swanee to the east really doesn't have any issues that I can see. In your studies, do you think the same way?
Madam Chair, I looked at this very closely last year and was prepared for that question, and I can tell you a little bit about what I know. Number one, this station here is actually right. It's hard to tell from this scale, but it's on the Withlacoochee right before the confluence. And I believe that the higher nitrate level at that station is probably influenced by a large spring upstream. And that would be my guess. And because if you look at the surface water just over the state line here, that's the Pinetta gauge, it's fairly low in nitrate comparatively. And then the only other big input we have, I mean, there are lots of inputs certainly, but the big input we have is a spring that does have elevated nitrates in it, and it's a large spring. So that would be my guess, but I haven't really teased apart the data to show that emphatically. And then as far as this one goes, that's the one I'm sort of pulling a blank on. I need to kind of think about where that one is, but I think it's downstream of some springs. Typically what we're seeing, if the surface water is impacted by nitrate, it's usually because it's downstream of a spring influence or multiple spring influences. That's kind of what we're seeing as a pattern in the district surface waters, because as you can see, a lot of our surface waters don't seem to have those impacts. And so typically that's what I think the pattern is. That helps answer.
I have a question.
Hold on.
Okay, sorry.
One question. Back at the ending where you had the spring stations, yep, and we have the 2 or 3 that's above 10. The gauging process is 0.35 to 10. That's such a wide range. From the above 10 in either direction, is it a steady decline? When it gets out of the yellow to the below 0.35, or are the numbers all over the board in that 0.35 to 10? It just doesn't paint a real good picture we're monitoring under 3.35 and over 10.0, and then everything else in the middle. I mean, how close to 9 is it? I mean, where are those numbers?
Madam Chair, I have wrestled with how to display this in a way that did make sense. And yes, I agree with you. The range between 0.35 and 10 is very large. And the main reason for using each of those thresholds is because those are established thresholds for us to measure.
Acceptables, yeah.
The only bonus slide that I brought with me today that might shed a little light on that, I will say I have attempted in the past to use the rainbow of colors to kind of show as the nitrate levels change, maybe by 1 milligram per liter. There are not enough, I mean, that's 10 different colors, and it's very difficult to distinguish some of those colors on a map like this. And so I drew back from doing that. It got kind of busy, kind of quick. But I can come back and show some specific numbers to the board for all 71 springs. But I did somewhere in here, those are just frequency of the different monitoring stations. That's kind of boring. But what we have here, I did pull out the outstanding Florida springs. So the 14 that we look at in the district and what those specific numbers are. Again, it's not color coded, so it's not completely intuitive. You have to look at each one specifically, but that kind of gives you an idea of where each spring is in the continuum of 0.35 to 10. So we don't really of the outstanding Florida springs. Fanning is the highest in that particular spring group at approaching 7 milligrams per liter.
And there's no above 10s in that?
No above 10s in the OFSs. We have, let's go back. We have 3 above 10s in the other springs. I'm sorry that these are so far apart. So 2 that we have trend data for, 3 that we just have status data for.
Back to that last slide. The arrows, is that trending up? So it goes upstream there? Is that what that means?
It doesn't mean as it goes upstream, it's trending up as much as that specific spring is trending up. But yes. So in the reach of the Suwannee between Ellaville and the confluence with Santa Fe, you've got 1, 2, 3 that are trending up and 2 that are trending down and several that are stable.
Okay.
The
one that had the numbers was good. I like that. Couldn't see it, but I liked it.
Oh shoot, Madam Chair, I'm sorry about that. I can I'll try to think of a way to display all 71 with numbers that might be more informative. We might have to break up the map into units, but we can do that.
The FDEP nutrient impaired basins, what exactly is that?
Madam Chair, the DEP quite a long time ago established total maximum daily loads for several of our water bodies that are considered impaired for nutrients. They also do TMDLs for other elements of, other chemical components of water quality, but nutrients are kind of the focus of this, and that's why I included the nutrient impaired basins. So this roughly from here up is their upper Suwannee surface water basin that's considered impaired for nitrate. And then everything below there is the lower Suwannee. And then the estuary is its own, also considered impaired for nitrate. And then this is the Santa Fe, also considered impaired for nitrate. So they are established by DEP as a surface water basin that's considered impaired.
So the stuff to the very far east in Baker and Columbia County over there, Union County, is that nitrate as well?
That is, Madam Chair, that is the New River, and that's considered impaired for different water quality elements: dissolved oxygen, total phosphorus, and total nitrogen. A little bit different.
Okay, and then what about the Wasissa area?
Wasissa is considered impaired for nitrate.
So what's causing the nitrate? Is that the spray fields from Tallahassee?
Madam Chair? Do not know, but I will tell you that the Wasissa Basin is one of the BMAPs that's on deck right now with DEP, and they have started with what they're called their in-silt tool to identify nitrogen sources for that basin. And then from that, they will come up with allocations to reduce nitrogen sources for that basin.
So we can pretty much, well, we've been focused a lot in our area because most of the area is nitrate, right? We understand that it comes from fertilizers and waste and sewage and other things. What about in the far east areas, the oxygen and other things that they're saying is impaired? What are they? I'm not very familiar with that. What would be causing that surface water to be impaired? What is the cause of that right there? Because there's not a lot of development out that way. There's a lot of timber. There's a lot of, silviculture happening over there, but not much agriculture like what we experience over there in the Swanee area.
Madam Chair, I am not familiar enough with those BMAPs to know what has been targeted as the source of the impairment for dissolved oxygen.
I'm just curious. I'm just interested. What about Dr. Brown? What do you say?
Have some insight.
Madam Chair, if I may, in some of our systems, because they're dark water systems, their oxygen levels are lower than what would normally be targeted. So in some cases, our oxygen levels in our rivers don't hit the targets, but it is in some ways because it's a naturally tannic river, it's a dark water river, and so they more rapidly transition towards being impaired for oxygen. So in some of those, there's not actions that they're taking to try and fix the oxygen levels like they are with the nitrates.
So in other words, then Dr. Brown, if I understand correctly, there's natural amounts of nitrates in water, and there's natural amounts of not having oxygen in water bodies in our whole system. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's right. Okay. So are we battling against something that's naturally occurring?
In the context of nitrate, as Ms. Hestrick referenced, the nitrate targets that they came up with were based on what they saw as baseline levels prior to the development in this area.
And they have good records of what that was?
The quality of the records would be variable based on the systems, but we do have data from.
Because we were told one time that they based those records on what it was like when Columbus discovered the country, and I don't recall, water scientists being on those ships to be able to test what the water was. How do we know what that is? What's naturally occurring in our environment naturally? And where are those baselines coming from? Do we have good data? That's my question. You know me, I'm a data guy. Are we basing policy and spending $6.2 million on sewage systems based on good data?
Madam Chair, I don't think it was me that made the statement about Columbus. What we can do is we can go back and look at some of the original NSILT loading information and circle back with you. That research and that establishment of the targets is something that has been in place for a while, but we can certainly go back and look at that documentation and circle back with the data to you.
I would love to see some of that, and I'll tell you why, Dr. Brown. Maybe it's a workshop later on or whatever. But again, we're authorizing everything's getting to be much more expensive to do what we're trying to do. We're authorizing taxpayer dollars, millions upon millions of dollars, to do things for the DEP, to get down to water quality standards and everything else. And what I'm asking is where do those standards come from? Why are we spending this money? Is it something that's naturally occurring? Are we trying to fix something that naturally occurs? Are we creating more problems down the road that we're not aware of? What are we basing the science on? I know we base it a lot of times on the experts. But in the last 5 years, I've had a lot of experts tell me a lot of things that weren't true. health-wise. So I'm just saying, are we doing this work based on good data? Or do the experts that have put this data out there have some kind of motive to make the standard where it is, to where we're spending this money and we've got a whole industry, we got a whole market that we've created out of thin air to promote sewage companies putting pipes in the middle of the street. Just saying.
Yes, sir. No, I understand your question.
Because, I mean, they're saying that that area over there in the western, or the eastern part of the state is impaired because of lack of oxygen when it's a dark water system that doesn't have oxygen in it to begin with. But yet the environment thrives over there because that's what it's designed to do. Right? The fish and the aqua, the plants and everything else that live in those systems.
We have plants that are, and animals that are adapted in some cases to lower oxygen.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think that was the rationale that DEP had for not implementing a strategy similar to what we have got here relative to nitrate. Get the septic tanks in place and get them on centralized sewer, and get agriculture using its management practices to try and address those nitrate concerns. The discussion that I recall with DEP on that is that relative to the low dissolved oxygen, they were looking at it and saying, okay, we don't need to address and develop a strategy to address that because it is a naturally occurring level for that water body in that area. So we're not going to address that. The nitrate on the other side, like Dr. Brown and Susie has pointed out, is that those levels go back, because I remember when DEP working, I was with the Department of Ag at the time, but I remember working with DEP, they were developing the total maximum daily load of 0.35 milligrams per liter for the Swanee and the Santa Fe. And we had some discussions, being from the Department of Agriculture at that time, to try and make it a reasonable number. That number, that 0.35, goes back to what they call, DEP calls, their background concentrations that they see. And if I recall correctly, the number that they used, the 0.35, was actually derived from what they saw in Juniper Springs down in the Ocala National Forest, because you've got a spring there that you have no development outside of silviculture. You really don't have any development in that area that should affect the water quality of that spring. And that's what they saw there as a naturally occurring nitrate level. If you look at the Swanee and the Santa Fe, those numbers go back to the 1970 timeframe from a water quality standard within the river. So that's a long ways back, and there's a lot of things that have occurred since the 1970 timeframe.
I'm looking at him right here.
Yes, sir.
50 years. A long time.
It's a long drawback.
But my question would be, is in 1970, Fanning Springs, for example, it's like 6 something. I saw that a while ago. What was it in 1970? Was it 0.35? I mean, was it way back to that level, or are we looking at a number that is, it was 6.2, whatever at that point?
Susie's got drawn up. The district didn't come into reality until 1972, from the district perspective. But there was the Department of Natural Resources that was in existence back at that time as well, now known as DEP.
So it was in 1970, it was relatively low. Is that what the little triangle is there?
Madam Chair, yes, sir, that is.
Oh,
It's not
Got a
0.35
problem.
milligrams per liter. 0.35 is demarcated by that green line. So it was above it
Right.
in 71, but it was much lower than it is today.
We also noticed the septic to sewer project still going up.
We're spending a lot of money down in the Fanning Springs area to do that. on projects.
Well, that is a spring that's sitting right on top, a development sitting right on top of a spring. I mean, it's like, kind of like Bradford Springs. I mean, if they didn't have a sewer system there that was hooked up, it might be a lot worse than what it is. But, you know, I mean, and I know there's ag in the area, but I don't know how big that spring shed is that it pulls from, but that's pretty good indication that development / public sewer probably has a lot to do with it, right?
Madam Chair, there is quite a bit of activity on the land surface in the basin for Fanning Spring that probably contributes to the high nitrate levels. And as far as the allocation, or actually the nitrate sourcing, DEP is doing a pretty decent job of kind of identifying what those sources are in the different basins. So I would defer to look at those and take a look and see what you.
Madam Chair, if I may, we can share that loading information out with the board, and we can discuss it further if there's questions.
And one final question is, like, when we do I know there's a lot of work going on in Fanning with the sewer project and all that, but once that's completed, once everything's done, how long does it take, do you think, for us to see a change? I mean, does it take years? Is there enough nitrate in the soil that it's going to take years to see a difference, or is it something we would see fairly immediately or within a year or so?
Madam Chair, that truly does depend. It is very spring specific, and where the nitrate sources are coming from and how those are spatially arranged over in the basin itself, but also over if there's a spring conduit system, if there are direct sources above a spring conduit system, you can see those changes pretty quickly. But if it is something that is a basin-wide effect, it sometimes can take decades to see the changes. So it really depends on what the source is and where it is spatially located to the spring.
Any other questions?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, those are good questions. I'm like you, I would like to see how quickly it makes sense. If you've got a fast conduit, like conduit underground from spring to spring, it moves fast. If it's through the soil, it's going to move slow.
And many of our springs have both.
All right. If there are no other questions, then that was a lot of information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm also here for agenda item 36.
Okay.
I'm Chair, members of the board, for agenda item 36, which is on Water Resources, page 2. I have for your consideration staff's recommendation for the interagency joint funding agreement with the United States Geological Survey. This is our annual agreement with them. The district has cooperated with the USGS since the 1970s to collect high quality water resources data from major surface water stations throughout the district. As part of this ongoing agreement, the USGS operates and maintains for us data collection platforms, gauges, and sensors at the stations shown on this map. In addition, they provide quality assurance for the data they collect, and they archive and publish the data for us. So this map shows the location of the USGS stations under the JFA, Joint Funding Agreement, and the type of data that are collected at each. A few of the stations are overlapping because of their close proximity to each other. The work funded by this agreement provides essential information that supports the district's groundwater modeling and drought monitoring, and the production of flood warnings and forecasts for the stations circled in red here. In addition, several of the long-term stations serve as compliance gauges for our minimum flows and minimum levels circled in white here. Table 1 in your packet provides a detailed budget showing the cost to operate each monitoring station for fiscal year 25 and a breakdown of the proposed cooperative funding. There is an approximate 5% cost increase compared to last year. This was an across-the-board and anticipated increase in the USGS's cost to maintain those stations for us. And the proposed funding agreement, I forgot to mention, I think I mentioned earlier that this is an example of the publication of the USGS data on their website. So they publish the data that they collect at our stations in real time for the public. And also those data are published to the district's current river level page, as well as our call-in river levels page. Sorry that I forgot to mention that earlier. And then back to the map. Okay, so the proposed joint funding agreement is for a total amount of $1,466,540, with the district contributing $909,140, and USGS and other cooperators contributing $557,400. Last year, we were able to offset part of our share for 6 of our coastal river stations. These ones that are right up near the coast that are shown in green. We obtained, for the last 2 years now, have obtained a DEP grant. They pay us back for paying the USGS to do this, speaking of red tape. And we offset last year's, our share of last year's JFA by $226,000. And we have received, what's the right word? Initial approval from DEP that they're going to offer us that funding again to fund those 6 stations fully. So we will be turning around and offsetting our $909,000 by some of that funding. I think that's all I have. Oh, I need to read the recommendation. Tyler, if I might have the memo. So our recommendation is that you authorize the executive director to enter into an interagency joint funding agreement with the United States Geological Survey for water resource data collection services for a total agreement amount not to exceed $1,466,540, with the district contributing $909,140, the total agreement amount for fiscal year 2024-2025.
I'm Chair, I make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hugh, have you got anything for us today?
A little bit.
All right.
But before I get started, I would like for Tyler Winburn to come to the podium, give us an update, because since our last meeting, the governor signed the budget. He's also signed and vetoed some bills of legislation that were of interest and will be of interest.
Morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Tyler Wimber. I'm the Legislative and Government Affairs Coordinator. I want to give you guys a quick follow-up for the legislative session for 2024. Since we last spoke, the governor's been busy. He's finalized the 24-25 state budget. He's also completed the review of all of his bills that passed during the regular session. 298 of those bills got signed into law. 185 of those bills took effect on Monday, July 1st. One of the bills that took effect was House Bill 5001, which is the General Appropriations Act. This was approved by the governor on June 12th. The final budget came in at $116.5 billion for the statewide budget, and this is a reduction in spending overall from last year's budget. All the appropriations to the district remained in the final budget. We got the $6.5 million for the recurring appropriation, and we got $2.5 million for the non-recurring appropriation for the external facilities renovation. So we're very grateful to the legislator for putting that into the budget, and very grateful for the governor for signing that budget. As Ben touched on, we're already in the works. Ben's already in the works and getting some numbers together for what we're going to be able to do with that $2.5 million to improve the facilities. When we last spoke, we talked about 7 bills of interest. All 7 of those bills have been signed into law now. 3 of the bills involve rulemaking for the district. One of those was Senate Bill 1136, which is the regulation of water resources. This bill is the one that changed the requirements for what it takes to sit for a well water licensing contracting exam. It now requires that the experience be done in the state of Florida, whereas before it could be anywhere. As far as the action that we'll have to do for rulemaking, we'll just adopt the DEP's rule by reference whenever they create it, and it'll go into our handbook. The next one is House Bill 1557. That's the DEP package bill. Bill does a lot of stuff, but it also required us to work with DEP to create some new rules to promote the use of reclaimed water. The team's already working on that with DEP and in conversation on what that rule is going to look like. That rule has to be developed by December 31st, 2025. And the last one that involved rulemaking was Senate Bill 7040. This is the ratification of the stormwater regulation rules. So starting on July 1st, last week, there's a new requirement that there has to be periodic inspections for stormwater treatment facilities or systems. And also on July 1st, last week, there's new requirements for permitting of dams and the alteration of dams that exist. And then 18 months from now, January 1st, 2026, there's going to be performance standards that all stormwater systems have to meet to get the ERP permitting. That'll be done through modeling and calculations. And it has to do with the local conditions and the runoff volumes and those type of things. So 18 months from now, that's going to be a requirement to get a permit to create the stormwater system. But as far as updates go, that's what I've got. And if you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good update.
Okay, Madam Chair and Board, now I'll be very brief. I've only got a couple of items. Want to let the board know that that our staff have prepared for emergency operations in the event we're into hurricane season now, as you all well know, and review of our continuing operations plan with it and making preparations to address that if the need arises with it. And then other thing that I would mention is Amy and I did do a presentation. We were asked to give a presentation about the district, our resources, and kind of an overview of our programs here to the National Association of Conservation Districts. It was their annual meeting, and this year they decided to meet in Gainesville, take a tour of our district along with some of our springs, and then our coastal areas. I know Troy and staff went out, met with that national group, and it talked about Ichtuckney, talked about the Cedar resources at Cedar Key, and gave information to them. And Amy and I traveled to Gainesville over the University of Florida, the conference center there, and gave a presentation about the district and our springs. And they were very appreciative of that information. And they agreed that this was the 5th largest district, but it was also the best district in the state from a resource perspective. We're glad to hear that. And that's all I've got, Madam Chair, unless we've got questions or comments. We do have a Lands Committee meeting with several items on that as well.
All righty. Any questions for Hugh?
Hugh, I'm glad you reiterated that. I was going to ask you if you made sure that they understood that we were the 5th largest.
That's right.
And that we are the best.
Yes, sir. I certainly did.
Very
And you
good.
can attest to that. She was in audience.
Dr. Brown, appreciate you backing him up on that. That came from a doctor's perspective.
Exactly.
There you
I mean,
go.
how can you argue with that?
I learned a long time ago not to
I just just one comment. Just go ahead and put on your calendars. We have 2 meetings in September coming up, and sometime, and those are at different times. Those are at 3 in the afternoon. So put that on your
I have a
calendar.
request.
Yes.
Madam Chair, on the August 13th meeting, could we possibly try to maybe meet at 8 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock and see how that works for everybody and see if that works, see if that's a fit.
Do I'm gonna
Is
ask
that okay with you, Robin?
because I know staff staff and everybody has to have time to get ready for the board meeting, so.
They do the day before.
They do the day before? Okay. Comments?
We have to notice for the newspapers every year of what time the meeting started. This was noticed back in January, so it is something that can be done if we can discuss.
In the future.
Get back with you.
Okay, that'd be fine. Well, we would hate for you to have to put anything else in the paper, stimulate any of that, spend any extra money. But it was just a thought. But if you looked around this morning, most of the board was here around 8:30, and most of us are eager to work. I know that staff gets in here about 8 o'clock normal times, but I assume that you guys would be ready for the meeting the day before when you do your run through. And I just think it would accommodate the board a little bit better because we have most of us run businesses. We have a lot of work to do or part of organizations that are making things happen. So I think it would be healthy for everybody to be able to do that, but it's just a thought.
We will certainly work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard?
Yes,
And to help Robin out, on the second meeting in September, I have a conflict. I won't be able to attend. I don't know if quorum is going to be an issue. I mean, I could make some arrangements and probably make myself available if it was going to be a quorum issue.
Okay.
But
So
just
noted.
wanted to go ahead and put that out there. That's a problem.
Thank you. That does help Robin a bunch. All right. So we've had general discussion. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn our meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. We are adjourned. All right. So you have a lands
Yes.
committee.
We will be starting the Lands Committee in about 15-minute break here. And if that's okay with you guys, and then we'll be ready to roll. Hopefully we can get done by lunchtime. Ladies. Hey, Katie, how you doing? We have quite a lengthy list of items that we need to get through. I'm grateful for everybody being here. I'm going to call this meeting of the Lands Committee to order. Let everybody know that this is a meeting that's open to the public. We are on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com at SRWMD. I want to, if you don't mind, Miss Robin, if you'll do a roll call.
Mr. Schwab?
Here.
Mr. Keith?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Sessions?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum of the Lands Committee.
Thank you very much. We have like I said, we have a full agenda. Is there any public comments? I do not have anything in front of me. Is there anybody in the audience? Katie, would you like to say anything, being that you're a member of the public here? Okay, excellent. I just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity if you wanted to. Okay, all right. Any other comments from staff? All right, excellent. We're going to go through this. So, Caitlin, I'm going to turn the floor over to you right now with the management agreements.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We have a number of items for your consideration today. They will all be presented by me with staff input as needed on various items. The first item for your consideration is item number 3, Gilchrist County Wellfield Track Management Agreement with the Gilchrist County School Board. The district received a request from the Gilchrist County School Board FFA chapter to utilize 16 acres of the district's Gilchrist County Wellfield tract for educational purposes. A map of the tract is shown on the screen as well as in your board packet. And the hatched area in yellow is the approximately 16 acres that the the Gilchrist County School Board is interested in utilizing. The FFA chapter plans to utilize the property for silviculture and agricultural educational purposes. The district has recently completed its timber harvest activities on that tract and in that area, and has no additional timber harvest activities planned. A fence would be installed on the district side of the property to establish the new boundary. The district would install a new access road to our retained portion and a fire line, and we would retain access and timber rights across the entire parcel, although the timber rights are less relevant given that there's not merchantable timber on that 16 acres that we're interested in. The agreement will remain in effect. Your board memos, or sorry, your committee members memo says 50 years. That is a typo. It is 15 years unless terminated by either party. And use of the leased area is exclusive to the Gilchrist County FFA program. No other Gilchrist County School Board activities will be permitted unless authorized by the board and amended by the management agreement. This was reviewed by the district staff, land acquisition and surplus team on May 30th, and all voted in support. And with that, staff requests that the committee approve the Gilchrist Wellfield Tract Management Agreement with the Gilchrist County School Board.
Make a motion? Excuse me?
I have one question. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Caitlin, it's been, timber's been harvested. It's probably got stumps and stuff out there. Are we cleaning it up for them, or are they cleaning it up? Or are they just going to utilize it as?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
we are not destumping, and they will utilize the property as is, and they will have to submit a activities plan as the management plan is currently drafted, and we'll find out more information as to what their activities are. But it's mostly silvicultural and agricultural. Well, it's all silvicultural and agricultural practices.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion.
We have a motion already on the table.
Oh, we do.
Would you like a second?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Does any other questions or discussion? As the chair, I do have one question. Are they going to grow vegetables on this piece of property?
Mr. Chair, I am not aware.
So if they do grow vegetables, do we have first right of refusal on some of those vegetables because I like vegetables?
Can we request?
Yeah, can we request that from the FFA?
I can certainly have our attorney write in a provision that vegetables be mailed to Mr. Swab.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Counselor.
You know, we haven't had any since Tom brought us onions.
No, that's exactly right. And so if there's any other farmers in the room, that would be, nice to have there on that. But that's another subject for another day. We have a motion and a second on the table. Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee. We'll move on to our next item. This next item is a donation of a conservation easement in Gilchrist County for approximately 149 acres with Mr. Leland Wright. In May 2024, Leland Wright offered the district a conservation easement donation on 149 acres of his property, as you see indicated on the screen in the map shown, as well as in the maps in your packet, which is adjacent to the district's single landing track. The property contains approximately 83 acres in the floodway, 119 acres in the 10-year floodplain. All of the property is within the 100-year floodplain. 22 acres offer surface water protection. The property is within the Fanning Manatee Priority Focus Area, and the property is within the Swanee Basin Management Action Plan. Mr. Wright has agreed in principle to the terms listed below: minimal development, structures within identified areas, livestock and agricultural activities as they exist today, which are very minimal and passive, in accordance with BMPs. No hunting, that is his request, not ours. Silvicultural activities and allowance with BMPs. The existing fences and roads would be allowed. No division of title, no commercial or additional development, no land conversion in the perpetual easement held by the Water Management District. There's a spring on the property. Your memo says Dinner Hole Spring. I was corrected by a local who was offering comments on this project that it was called Dinner Plate Spring in your memo. It is actually known as Dinner Hole Spring by the locals, known to be quite abundant for fishing, that you could drop a line in there at any time and catch your dinner. Staff visited the property on June 20th and took some photographs, which are included in your packet, and supported the donation as well. And with that, staff requests the Lands Committee authorize detailed assessment on 149 acres for the donation of the conservation easement by Mr. Leland Wright in Gilchrist County.
Make a motion.
I've got a motion on the table. We got a second. Any discussion or questions for Caitlin? I'm just curious, what is the motivation for Mr. Wright to give a conservation easement? Is it just for his tax purposes, or is he just feeling like he wants to be generous, or what's the deal?
As Mr. Wright has communicated to me that he has a deep appreciation for conservation, that area and that specific piece of property. Tyler, can you click to the LiDAR, or do I have? It is well within the floodplain, as you can see here, and it is very wet and just a very special piece of property, and he desires to conserve it perpetually. Very, very adamant about the conservation, said that if the district is not interested in his donation, that he'll go to another agency just because he cares that much about the conservation of the property. And then I think is also interested relative to the donation as it relates to his personal taxes.
Okay. We have a, yes, sir.
Just one quick question. When we take on a conservation easement like this, how much, I mean, this is obviously a property we want. He's given it to us, we should take it. But do we have any obligations as far as it's going to cost us money to maintain this easement?
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. So what you're approving as part of the detailed assessment is allowing us to go out and we would do title work because owning this less than fee will be in the chain of title. And Tommy can speak to the title implications of that. But if you purchase property, you've done title searches. We would also do an environmental site assessment if we suspected that there may have been some activities on the property that would be detrimental. In this case, we don't think there have been, but we'll investigate further. And then the most important after the title search is the baseline documentation report, which goes out and it establishes where structures are located, where roads are located, where fences are located. And then moving forward, it is our baseline to ensure that the easement is kept perpetually in the state that the board and the committee approved at the time of acquisition. The ongoing O&M for conservation easements are the monitoring, which we have right now. The executive director just signed what we call a standard or a procedure for every 3 years doing a monitoring review. Those can be on site, those can be desktop, and we do those both internally, and we are planning to bring a memorandum to the board for having contractual support for those. So there is an ongoing O&M, and we'll mention it today a little bit at the end, depending on how everyone's feeling, because I am butting up against lunch. We may defer it to a future lands committee if y'all would like. But we'll be talking about the triage criteria for how you want to consider conservation easements and their size as it relates to long-term O&M and what we feel like is beneficial to the district as well as for fee. So this one adjacent to existing district properties, and a number of them, fits well within what we think is a viable project, but there is long-term responsibility on conservation easements.
Mr. Chair, if I could add.
Yes.
Caitlin's responsibility. Mr. Johnson, as far as infrastructure improvements or any of that, the district will bear no burden for any of that cost. That will be on the landowner at that point. But invasive management, plant management, that will be on the landowner as well. They either will or will not be in compliance with the conservation easement at that point from a monitoring aspect with it. But we won't be building any roads, we won't be maintaining roads or any fence structures other than what, the adjoinement with our property, which is our fence.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next item. This is a temporary construction easement with the Florida Department of Transportation. In May 2024, the district received a letter, proposed easement, and surveys from the Florida Department of Transportation, known as DOT, requesting that the district grant a temporary construction easement over 1,319 square feet of district-owned lands for the reconstruction of the Brick Creek Bridge. The land involves a portion of the district's Steinhatchee Springs tract. The temporary construction easement is needed for the placement of heavy equipment and a temporary bridge during the construction of the Brick Creek Bridge replacement. There will be no permanent impact to the property. Staff have reviewed this proposal and are recommending the district grant the easement without compensation, assuring the agreement provides protections for the restoration of the easement upon termination. The beginning date and the end date of the project are not determined. Based on prior performance of DOT, for similar arrangements, the district is confident the land will not be permanently altered or damaged by the proposed action, and copies of the notice to owner and this survey are attached. You're going to see after this a second request, what they call a TCE, or a temporary construction easement from DOT. This one is for the project in orange. So if you're familiar with this area, this is 51. There's actually at least 4 bridges listed in here. The bridge in question for replacement is what they call this Brick Creek Bridge. And then our 1,319 square feet where they need to park equipment and put up a temporary bridge is within this box.
Caitlin, if we can, before we take a motion on that, why don't we go through the other 2 easements that DOT is requesting as well?
Okay.
We'll make it all one issue.
Yes, sir.
Can we do that?
Can we do that? Yep.
The next item, also with the Florida Department of Transportation, is to authorize an additional temporary construction easement, this time over 1 acre of district-owned land in Lafayette County for campgrade road improvements associated. And there's a correction here with the Steenhatchee Bridge, not the L.A. Bennett Bridge replacement, without compensation. In June 2024, the district received information from the DOT requesting that we grant a temporary construction easement over 1.049 acres on the district's Steenhatchee Springs tract in Lafayette County. The temporary construction easement is needed to provide a detour route from the L.A. Bennett Bridge to the Camp Road Bridge. These roads are not owned by the district, bypassing a portion of the Steenhatchee Bridge. The detour will encompass 1.049 acres of adjacent district land on the Steenhatchee Springs track. Both roads are already in existence and are open to the public. However, the bridge replacement will route additional traffic to the Camp Grade Road, of which the district owns property on either side. The temporary easement is an administrative procedure by DOT relative to the increased traffic on the existing roads. There will be no alterations to the property, and there will be no permanent impact to the property. Staff have reviewed this and recommend that the district grant the easement without compensation, assuring that the agreement provides protections for the restoration. Upon termination, based on prior performance of DOT of a similar arrangement, staff are confident that DOT will restore the property. And this 1 acre is within the yellow highlighted portion. And as I mentioned, it is, and actually more specifically, it is right about here in this intersection. And the bridge that's being replaced for this project is what our staff called the old iron bridge, which is right up here. And so the traffic on this side is being rerouted south and then to L.A. Bennett because they won't be able to cross up here.
Okay, and then what about the next?
These are the only 2.
Those are the other 2, okay.
Yes, sir.
So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to grant construction easement for the Brick Creek Bridge and Steenhatchee Bridge projects as
Okay.
recommended by staff.
Second.
I got a second. Any other discussion on the matter?
Just a comment.
Okay.
It seems like a lot to get for us to approve access for a sister agency or Department of Transportation to do work that they're going to do anyway. And if we didn't approve it, they're probably going to go to court and get approval to get it. It just seems like a lot of your time and effort and staff's time and effort and DOT's time and effort to make it happen.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
In the past, this has been years ago, we've contacted DOT and said, hey, guys, couldn't we just have an agreement that we sign off saying that you can use it? The district's never had any trouble with DOT that I'm aware of in the past. They always do what they say. They get in there, they use the property, they restore it. And they've just got a set of forms and they need an easement. And we even in the past said, well, why don't we do the easement and y'all just hold it, don't bother recording it. All that, no, it's got to be an easement, it's got to be recorded. all of that. They've got their form, so they have to do it that way. And I don't know that I blame them, because theoretically, even with a sister agency, well, what if we sold the property and they're halfway through? You know, they want to make sure nothing's going to mess up their construction. But we have broached that with them. Why don't we just do an agreement? They weren't able to do it.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry for the comment, but that's tax dollars, you know,
Yeah.
it's at work there, and the comment was made earlier about our lavish spending with the taxpayers' dollars, and this is just another example of it.
Mr. Chair, staff would be happy to bring several recommendations to the committee and the larger board about potentially streamlining these types of easements that, as Mr. Thompson mentioned, would likely be taken in eminent domain were we not to grant them.
I would, as a chairman of the committee, I would strongly encourage you to explore that and bring that to us.
Yes, sir. Will do.
Is that okay with the committee?
Fine with me.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
Wouldn't that be like an interlocal agreement?
The next item for your consideration is an access easement over the Country Club Road Track in Columbia County with Ms. Desiree Jolene Goosen. In March 2024, the district received a request from Ms. Desiree Jolene Goosen for access easement on the district's Country Club Road Track in Columbia County. This track is shown in the map in your materials, is also shown on the screen here. This should look familiar to you. This is the district's Country Club Road Track. The easement being sought is an easement over the road indicated here, which is known as Southeast Fritzie Court, which intersects with Southeast Country Club Road and bifurcates the district's Country Club Road track. Ms. Goosen owns the property indicated in red and has utilized access since 2015. However, recently a title search revealed that she has no dedicated access to her property, and therefore her attorney and agent reached out to us requesting this access. The district has a known access easement across Fritzie Court already for a neighboring landowner, which is to the north here, that was issued by the governing board on November 12th, 2013 to Mr. Anthony Lebowski and Ms. Tiffany French for access to their home, which I just indicated. The requested easement would be limited to Fritzie Court and would include language allowing the district to move the easement if determined necessary, but still granting access. The district's land acquisition and surplus team reviewed the proposal on May 30th and recommends that the district grant the easement with language that the easement can be moved based on district needs. Ms. Goosen has agreed to absorb all costs associated with the easement and recording. With that, staff recommend that the committee approve an access easement on Country Club Road Track in Columbia County with Ms. Desiree Jolene Goosen.
Make that motion.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
I got a second. Any discussion on the matter? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. The next item for your consideration is an offer made by Mr. Michael Kuhn of Suwannee County. In June 2023, the district received an offer from Mr. Michael Kuhn to exchange 80 acres of the district's Rocky Creek Track in Suwannee County for 62 acres and less than fee ownership of Mr. Kuhn's property, which is adjacent to the track. And let me clarify that. Also, the initial offer that came in was not the full 62, but that was what the modified offer that's being brought to you today is. So the initial offer that came in June was received by the staff committee. The staff committee rejected that initial offer, but said go back and negotiate with Mr. Kuhn, and that is what, and then come back to the staff committee and follow the normal process, which is what you see before you here. The district's 80 acres in question is this yellow block here. The district owns this Rocky Creek track in its entirety. The Kuhn property is right here. In addition to the swap, there would be an access easement, which is in blue, listed on the map. The district's Rocky Creek tract, which you see in green, is 251 acres in total, with Rocky Creek bifurcating the property as it drains to the Swanee. The tract is being managed through timber harvest, woods mowing, and hardwood chipping operations. The tract has a number of known gopher tortoise burrows, which are expected to increase as restoration continues. The tract and Rocky Creek provide an important wildlife corridor from Rocky Creek to the Swanee River and under I-75 to other conservation lands, which you can see listed there in green. Those are district-owned. The exchange proposal would allow for permanent access to the eastern side of the Rocky Creek tract. However, the exchange would reduce the overall tract size, which is less desirable for management purposes and would interrupt the resource corridor that is being restored. Currently, access to the eastern side of the parcel is provided through a written agreement with an adjacent landowner. The offeror also requested the installation of a high fence around the acquired parcel and a desire to purchase an additional 17 acres in the future. The 60-acre portion offered in less than fee acquisition was recently clear-cut and replanted in pine. The Rocky Creek tract, which is indicated in the maps in your packet and on the screen, is within the 10-year and 100-year floodplain as indicated on the screen. It provides important natural resource protection. Ownership of the property is consistent with the district's goal of floodplain protection, and our tract is not currently listed or planned for surplus. The offer was reviewed by the district's land acquisition and surplus team on May 30th. Based on the tract's alignment with district land ownership, current restoration activities, the desire to keep the tract size intact, and current access, staff recommends denial of the exchange offer. The offeror was notified of the staff recommendation and did not wish to withdraw his offer. And with that, staff recommend that the committee deny the offer to exchange property in fee for a conservation easement and access easement with Michael Kuhn of Suwannee County.
I made the motion to deny.
Got a motion?
Second.
I got a second. Mr. Sessions, did you want to say something?
Michael Kuhn is a constituent of mine. He's a neighbor also. He's always wanted the property since, when he started the process. He said that, he did everything he needed to do, but, I'm going to go with the decisions of the board. I don't see why we would want to sell something that's good for us.
Okay. Any other comment?
Yeah, I have one, and my observation was that our properties are contiguous now. We're looking at swapping a piece of property that's going to basically put him in the middle of us, right? Am I correct in that assessment?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
the exchange is the exchange of fee. So the exchange is for us to give the 80 acres, which is outlined in yellow, in fee, him retain the white portion and put a conservation easement over all of it. So we would lose the 80 in fee.
So it's not he's not looking for, I get it now.
We're giving him 80 acres of land. He's giving us 62 extra acres of conservation easement in exchange for 80 acres of land. Is that how I'm interpreting this?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. And it would be an easement. And again, these are draft proposed terms, but over the whole thing.
But the other idea though is Mr. Kuhn wants to put a high fence around the whole thing, which would mess up the management, even though it's a conservation easement. It would mess up the management of the very northern block up there as well. So we have a recommendation and a second. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, where is our access easement on the south side located now? It's through. I can show you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear, we have a permissive use agreement with this landowner, and it comes up, Mr. Sessions, it comes up right up through here and snakes around back here.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, if you let me, I'll show you exactly where the double gates are. Comes into our bottom corner.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Poucher's got the land adjacent and has always had an agreement to do that. So they enter in the property, and then there's a double gate right about here, that enters property, so they just come right through the property right here and out. And he's always allowed us free access. And that's just an agreement. We don't have any type of
Is that in writing?
Mr. Chair, it is in writing,
Okay, good.
but,
and we have access from the north also, if necessary.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
we do have access from the north, and on the western side of Rocky Creek.
Final question, the 62 conservation, the map before. Yeah, right, with the red. Doesn't show a lot of conservation value. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the district's current ownership is well suited within the district's mission and the district's current objectives.
Very well put, Caitlin. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Any other questions, any other thoughts, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Caitlin, can I make one quick request though? Next time we get a lands committee packet, include the LiDAR maps, please. We don't have those in our board packet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I like the colors. It's very nice to see all that.
And I apologize, Mr. Chair.
No, no problem. Thank you. Next.
The next item for the committee's consideration is a denial of the district's exercise, to decline to exercise the right of first refusal for Zelwyn Farms Company, Jennings Bluff Conservation Easement in Hamilton County. In February of 1989, the district purchased a conservation easement on 300.3 acres of land known as the Jennings Bluff Conservation Easement. At the time of purchasing the conservation easement, the district also reserved a right of first refusal to purchase the land in fee in the event the owner ever elected to sell to a third party. In May 2024, the district received notice that the current owner received a bona fide offer to purchase the easement parcel as part of a larger sale. Under the terms of the conservation easement, the district has 90 days to exercise its right of first refusal to purchase. The district has been offered the easement acreage for $1.5 million. The district's acquisition and surplus team reviewed the proposal on May 30th and determined that ownership of the property in fee would not enhance the district's ability to provide conservation on the property and would not otherwise benefit the district. Staff therefore recommend that the district decline to purchase the property in fee under the terms of the right of first refusal. The sale of the property to the new owner they closed at the end of June, will have no impact on the district's enforcement of its conservation easement and will continue to be binding on the new purchasers. The contract for sale specifically states that the property is subject to the easement, and we have already been in contact with the new owners who are willing and planning a site visit with staff. And just for interest, you asked me this question during the run-through. When we purchased it in 1989, the district purchased the property from Hamilton Turpentine for $144,000 or $478 per acre.
And Mr. Chairman, in full disclosure, my firm conducted the closing and all that on this parcel, so I wouldn't be able to advise you. I don't know that there are any legal issues, but just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Thank you, Counselor.
Make a motion to go with the recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion on the matter? All in favor, say aye. Any like signs, any opposed? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
They interested in any more swamp land? They interested in any more floodplain land?
All right, updating existing projects. Caitlin?
Yes. Okay, so this is these are projects that the committee and the board have approved for detailed assessment, which means that we are negotiating with the landowner and we are moving towards a recommendation to the board to either purchase, and these are all conservation easements, or to that we couldn't get to terms. So these are projects that I inherited when this program came over to the Division of Outreach and Operations, and wanted to provide y'all an update. So the current projects that we have are the Ellison Access Agreement in Dixie County, the Crimson Swamp Access Agreement in Levy, the Hodges Conservation Easement and the Williams Conservation Easement, both in Levy, the Taylor Conservation Easement in Gilchrist, the Newberry Wellfield Conveyance, which is in Alachua, and the Dixon Conservation Easement, which is in Hamilton. The Ellison Access Easement, which is in Dixie County, is listed. You see here, this one generated much conversation from the board when it came. And Mr. Ellison is currently working on surveys and appraisals for the property, and it is moving along nicely. The Crimson Swamp Access Easement is one that it goes through the district's Manatee Springs South track, and the district has a current easement which is in the green hatched area, and is proposing to have an easement on the yellow hatched area, which is an existing road. This is something that the committee and the board has already approved, and we are in discussions with the landowner or the requester right now. Part of this easement included the conservation of a slough area, which is up here. So we're working with our legal counsel and their legal counsel to develop an instrument that would allow the easement to continue with the conservation easement to be binding should they not issue this property to Florida Forever. So that'll come back to the committee with some clarification on the language, but they're working with the district, and it is also moving along. The Hodges Conservation Easement is a 750-acre easement in Levy County. I actually talked to Mr. Hodges this morning. We met with him and his niece, who is a partial owner, last week, and have been in conversations with them. We are finalizing terms with them, proposed terms with them, and we'll move to appraisals. And then if we can agree to a price, we will bring it back to the committee and to the board for conservation easement purchase. The Williams Long Pond project is a 900 and approximately 50-acre project in Levy County, which you see indicated on the map here. This is one that the committee and the board also approved. Also have talked to their agent this week and in weeks prior, and we have a final draft of the easement terms ready to go. And so once it gets approved in principle by the landowner, we will also move to appraisals and then agree to a price if we can, and bring that back to the committee and to the board for approval. This property, just so that the committee is aware, is currently under consideration for rezoning with the county and being annexed to the city of Chiefland. And we're working with the agent to determine what the landowner's plans are, which, as they've indicated, are to still continue with the conservation easement. The next project that the committee and the board have approved for detailed assessment is with Mr. Taylor, over 900 acres in Gilchrist County. And we have been working with our projects team, which was a goal of this easement, to move forward with the project area. We are not quite ready to identify a project area from the district's perspective. So what you'll likely see from us is a recommendation to continue acquisition of this easement and include the district's project language that says we can revisit this site for a potential project. Leroy and his team are still very interested in this area. We're just not quite ready to define a project area on this parcel quite yet, and wouldn't want to be bound to that in the easement. This is a project that the committee and the board also approved some time ago. It is the conveyance of the Newberry Wellfield property, which is indicated in green, to the city of Newberry. and we just finished a round of edits to the terms of this week as well. Sent them over to our legal counsel to make sure that they are consistent with the district's goal and mission, and have been in contact with the city of Newberry relative to those terms, and hopefully will bring this project to a close very soon. And lastly is the Dixon Conservation Easement. It is 40 acres in Hamilton County. You may remember that this project includes a spring that's on site, and we are out for appraisals right now. Those are due back to the district at the end of July. And once those appraisals come in, we will negotiate price and either move forward if we can agree to a price or won't. And with that, I will take any questions on our current projects.
Any questions?
Just clarification for me, back on the Taylor project, you said there was discussion internally about a project that was possibly going to take place in this area. Did I hear you correctly?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this conservation easement was presented to the board with the idea of purchasing the easement and a focus on a water resource project potential. So this would be to assist in the recovery of MFLs in that area. And while that area and by area, I mean this land area is of interest to our projects team, we are not ready to specifically define acreage on this parcel for a project yet.
Okay.
Conducting studies to be able to identify if this is a viable piece. But staff do like this parcel for acquisition as an easement. It's a big parcel. It's in a great area. It has project potential. Monitoring would be relatively easy. It's consistent with the district's mission, which you'll likely see that clarification back from staff as we move forward.
Mr. Chair, if I could add also from Mr. Thompson, some of the discussions relative to projects that we've had with Mr. Taylor have been primarily for water storage during high flow conditions off the Santa Fe and Cow Creek, which runs adjacent to his property. Is perhaps doing some water storage on his property there. And he's been amenable to some of the discussions on it, but we haven't identified anything formally yet.
I haven't actually been on that property, but I know it sits in an area that probably gets wet when the water gets high. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? All right, moving along. Caitlin?
All right. The next item for your consideration is the update of Governing Board Directive 24-0004. These are edits to the district's utility and right-of-way easements directive, which are included in your packet in a red line and a clean version. On March 2004, the governing board approved the request for ingress and egress and right-of-way district across district lands directive, which at that time was titled GBD 90-2 LA. And the reason that the naming convention is different is that these directives and policies had originally existed within the program as early as 1990, and then was later brought to the board for the board's adoption in 2000. This directive updates previous versions and establishes the criteria for submitting an easement request along with the district's policy on how easements would be evaluated. The updated language proposed includes the following changes. It clarifies information to be provided within the easement request, which is very important as we receive the easement requests that we can, similar to permitting and requests for additional information, we can have it laid out and clarified what we need for the committee to be able to make a sound decision on the easement. It includes the district's right to move access easements based on our needs, which we just discussed with the Goosen easement. And it lists previous governing board and programs directive, which are being superseded, which is a clerical and administrative need in this directive. Approval of this revised directive will supersede 90-2 LA, which was revised in 2000, and 92-001, along with all former versions of similar content and nature, and become effective immediately. With that, staff requests that the Lands Committee approve Governing Board Directive 24-004 for utility and right-of-way easements.
You make a recommendation. I have a second on that. I got a second. Any discussion, comments on it? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Thank you, Ms. Caitlin.
Sir, thank you. The next item for your action, this is the final item for Lands Committee action, is the approval of Governing Board Directive number 24-005 for land acquisition and surplus guidelines. On June 21st, the board approved water resource guidelines for acquisition and surplus, which is Governing Board Directive 21-003. This revised directive addresses eligibility requirements and guidelines to direct district land acquisition and surplus activities. The directive provides guidelines for consideration on how we acquire and surplus our processes and procedures to determine surplus properties, and creates procedures for the disposition of revenue derived from the disposal of lands acquired with Preservation 2000 and Florida Forever funds. Approval of this revised directive will supersede GBD 21-003, along with all former versions of similar content and nature, and become effective immediately. And the primary update on this directive, which you can see in the red line version, is I moved some information around, which doesn't change the intent of the directive at all, but places it in a better spot. And then we updated the expenditure authority, which is on the last page. We just struck that from the directive because you already have granted and outlined your expenditure authority for staff for all expenditures in the finance directive. With that, staff recommend that the committee approve Governing Board Directive number 24-005 for land acquisition and surplus guidelines.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
Motion approved.
Second. I got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
None.
Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any like sign? Opposed? Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. The last item for your consideration is not an item that requires your voting action, but is for your awareness and for your feedback, which you can give now or you can chew on and we can discuss at a later time. The district is required to complete a 5-year land acquisition work plan as defined by Florida statute. This was historically completed as the district's Florida Forever plan. The district currently does not have Florida Forever funds available and is not seeking Florida Forever funds. So we updated our plan to reflect that last year, and thereby need to complete a 5-year land acquisition work plan. Staff's current approach towards developing a 5-year work plan would be to focus on the areas that you see here, which are primarily for access, water resource development project areas, in-holding or management improvements, and then lastly, resource corridor connectivity, or what I like to call legacy projects. So these would be very intentional conservation easement, or primarily conservation easement based on the direction of the committee and the board, or fee ownership that had a big, very intentional strategic goal for the district. So you will be seeing a 5-year work plan coming to the committee and coming to the larger board, consistent with the statute requirements in the future. This is just an update to let you know what we're working on, among many other things.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Was that Florida Forever funding? Was that the funding that we were basically bypassing or giving up by not implementing that wetland delineation or designation a few months back?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Those are two separate requirements for identifying properties. The Florida Forever Plan has its own statutory requirements. It's included in our consolidated annual report, and it was created several decades ago relative to the state creating Florida Forever funding. and the district created the initial plan, which was a very robust plan that included projects and mapping for acquisition. The district acquired a number of acres under the Florida Forever funding. Since that time, in the last several years, we have expended all of our Florida Forever funding, and so we don't have project areas associated with that because we don't plan to request Florida Forever funds at this time unless otherwise directed by the committee or the board, and thereby don't have a map or a list of projects to submit and don't have any internal Florida Forever funds on the books. The critical wetlands inventory analysis, I think, is the other list that you're referencing. That was mandated last year, and then based off the board's direction, we're evaluating those critical wetlands in association with Project Focus, which would be in conjunction with this 5-year work plan and would be part of the triage that we would bring back.
So if we were to find a piece of property or something came available that really made a lot of sense from a, for a project, then we would go and apply for funds through Florida Forever? Is that, there's still funding available there? We just don't have any?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We certainly could if that was the direction of our board or if we needed to. I think that Leroy's group identifies a variety of pots of funding that they seek for project implementation, but certainly Florida Forever funding through DEP is available. But the majority of Florida Forever funding and Florida Forever funding projects is being handled at the state level through the Acquisition and Restoration Council, known as the ARC, and they're handling that at the state level.
Any other questions?
None. On my part.
You have any announcements?
Mr. Chair, I do not have any additional announcements. We will bring back recommendations to you relative to access easements with other agencies and other opportunities to potentially streamline and improve our processes relative to land acquisition and surplus.
Excellent. Thank you, Kaylin. I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.